Single Family Design Board for August 1st, 2022. May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Here.
Vice Chair Kalaus,
Here.
Board Member Anderson, Board Member Arkalian,
Here.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Here.
and Board Member Klein.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within this jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that would like to speak?
I did not have anyone who submitted a speaker slip for today, and nor do I have anyone on Zoom who requested for general comment. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone coming forward. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for July 18th, 2022. Can we put them on the board, please?
I can run through them if you'd like.
Please, thank you.
Okay. So this is the Single Family Design Board meeting minutes from July 18th, 2020. This is the full board. Oh. Yeah. Item 1 was a discussion item that we ended up postponing until today. Item 2 is 910 San Carlos Road. And we received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent with findings.
I have a couple comments on actually most of the minutes, most of the items, just for what I think will be clarification
Sure.
and syntactical purposes in the future. Under item B, I think this would read, the intention would read better. The proposed addition is compatible with the neighborhood in its size and bulk, period. The scale is appropriate to the site and the neighborhood, period. The discrepancy in the roof slope is not visible from the public view and therefore acceptable for this project on this specific project site. And item F, I think would help to reverse the order of the statement and start with the word "with," so that the item would start with the reduction of the glazing along the south and east elevations and substantial screening at the easterly property line, comma, the project generally applies with the good neighborhood guidelines regarding privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting.
Is that your only comment for that project? Okay, great.
Okay, moving on. Item 3, 903 Alston Road was continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer and then to return to full board with the following comments. Item 4, 133.
I have comments on item 3 too.
Sure.
Item 1, under the motion, I think we can just delete the word "enough," given there is substantial relief. Item 2 should read, the board is generally, not general, in support. Can delete the word "proposed" before "stepped." And at the end of that statement, and roof lines from the hillside design guidelines standpoint. Item 4 should read, study other guard rail styles rather than guide railing styles. Those are my only comments for that item.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4, 1336 Shoreline Drive. Was continued indefinitely to the Planning Commission for return to full board with the following comments.
I have a number of comments on this motion, and I think it would probably be more productive for me to just send those over to staff.
Sure.
I think some of the items can be grouped together so we can reduce the number of items in the motion.
So I have a question. If, with those changes, should we bring it back next week for reapproval, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another item here, item 51364 Shoreline Drive. Continued indefinitely to full board with the following comments.
I have 3 quick ones on this one. Item 3, under the motion, we can delete the word "and," study alternative materials. Item 7, I think the direction there was to consider wood or breeze block. And item 8, I think to just clarify that we were asking them to study the conditions of all the adjacent lot lines relative to the subject parcel and how the fences, how they were dealing with fences. I don't know that was real clear in the way the minutes were captured.
Item 6, 222 Mesa Lane, was continued indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. And that concludes this agenda.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
Oh, that's a good question. Should we approve what we've got, or should we bring it back? Or,
So if we can receive the email that Ms. Kloss stated she would provide regarding some of her edits in conjunction with the edits we have now,
Yeah.
we can bring this back
Okay.
next round. Yeah.
all right, great. All right, moving on to the approval of the consent calendar for July 25th. Do we have those project items on
Yep.
record?
So July 25th, the consent meeting minutes. Item A was 302 Coleman Avenue. Received project design approval and final approval with the following conditions and findings. Item B, 740 Flora Vista Drive. Received project design approval and final approval with the following findings. Item C, 1626 Mira Mesa Drive. Looks like it was postponed at the applicant's request. Item D, 2345 Skyline Way, also postponed due to applicant's absence.
All right, thank you. And who on the record reviewed these projects?
Chair Miller and Board Member Klein.
All right, thank you. May I have a roll call, motion for approval, please? Excuse me.
I'll move.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Okay.
Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
I'm abstaining today. I'm new.
Okay. Board Member Akelian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to Dave, August 1st, consent calendar. Can we go through those items, please?
Yes, so the meeting minutes are still being finalized, but
Okay.
I can verbally, go through the agenda and reiterate what happened at today's meeting.
Okay, is that technically acceptable, I guess? Do they need to be written?
We can at least walk you through them, and then if you'd like to see the final, we can hold off on doing a vote until the next full board
We'll
meeting.
wait, I'll see how the board reacts. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so item A was 3424 Marina Drive. Let's see. The consent board members granted project design approval with the required findings and motion for the project to return to consent for final approval. And there was a comment to the applicant to provide sample pool photos when they apply for final approval. Item B, 1626 Mira Mesa Drive. was directed to return to consent for project design approval and final approval. It was continued 2 weeks. And the comments were to provide a more cohesive design consistent with Spanish architecture, restudy the garage door and the front entry, and to remove the front entry L element. Item C 2345 Skyline Way received project design approval and final approval with the required findings.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalos,
Yes.
Board Member Akilian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Klein,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
And Chair Miller, through you to Board Member Anderson, you can just say you abstain because you were not present for these meetings. We'll write that in the record.
Yes, I abstain. I have no idea.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Going on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants or continuances and withdrawals, any future agenda items and appeals. Do we have anything like that? I do have some announcements, but I believe you do as well.
Yes, Chair Miller, if I may. So I wish announcements would have been first, but I just want to recognize our new board member sitting at the table with us. We have Laura Lee Anderson, who's an architect, and we are so thrilled to have you
Yes,
here
we
on
are.
board. Yes, I just want to say that this is really a phenomenal addition to the SFDB, and we're really looking forward to working with you. And we have people who've been here for many years, and we have, I do look forward to setting some trainings as we've promised with people on the board, and coming back. And like I said, we're just thrilled to have you, and it's a little bit of a learning curve, but you'll kind of be able to dig in, and if you have any questions, we're here to support. So thank you again, and welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome. All right, thank you. So I'm going to go, and part of my talk is kind of in framework of having Board Member Anderson here, because to kind of get you acclimated to the board, but I think it's also important to kind of create a history and context to Single Family Design Board, because I've been on it since 2010. So I've been on it for a long time. I've also been working in the city in architecture for over 35 years. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to sort of kind of go off on my own little diatribe about the historical nature of our board and why we're here and how it was created. And I want to start off with a quote that is frequently spoken by Sheila Lodge. And it's kind of an interesting quote. And it's kind of the context and the heritage of our city is that, and the quote goes, "The old landmarks and most charming characteristics of Santa Barbara are disappearing before the march of improvement. And though our practical people cannot move mountains, nor change the scenes, nor spoil the climate, they are doing all they can to despoil the quaint beauty of the place and make it just a commonplace American town." And this was a editorial written in the Santa Barbara Morning Press, January 3rd, 1874. So even way back then, there was this feeling about Santa Barbara for preservation. I'd like to, if the camera can shine on this, on the roof, I want to kind of underline the purpose of the Single Family Design Board. Anyway,
If we could have City TV point the camera down, thank you.
there we go. I don't know if you can read it. But anyway, the Single Family Design Board was created in 2007 by Santa Barbara Municipal Code Chapter 22.69.010 to promote the general welfare, protect, and preserve the city's natural and historical charm, and enhance the city's aesthetic appeal and beauty. The general functions are to ensure that single-family residential unit projects are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and size and design, project public visual resources, promote the ecological sustainability of the city's built environment to the design review process, carefully apply the neighborhood preservation ordinance, single-family design guidelines, single-family design board guidelines, and Lower Riviera design guidelines, and other guidelines to the types of specific single-family residential projects listed in the table at the end of this announcement. So I'm not sure what that refers to, but it is referring to this book. Where's your book? Mine's out of date. But I wanted to make this familiar and to put this on record that any architect or building designer that comes before our review board, please review this book, because it makes our life so much easier in terms of your deciding the neighborhood compatibility of your project. And with that, I want to follow up with this picture. Does anyone know who this person is?
What's her name?
Anyone?
Chase.
Yes. Now, the reason I'm bringing this lady up on record is she's probably the major force as to why we have design review boards in Santa Barbara in the first place. And there's a little blurb that I got offline, and this is kind of how it says. Upon returning to Santa Barbara after graduating from the University of California at Berkeley, Chase was appalled at the state of our hometown. I was ashamed of the dirt and dust and ugly buildings and resolved then and there to devote my life to making Santa Barbara beautiful. She had a significant influence on the architecture of the city of Santa Barbara, but Chase never held political or government office of any sort. Chase was largely responsible for recasting the Santa Barbara architecture in the Spanish colonial style in the wake of the 1925 Santa Barbara earthquake. She founded a number of civic institutions in Santa Barbara, including the local chapter of the American Red Cross, the Community Arts Association, the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation, and the Indian Defense Association. She was involved in the advocacy for the protection of multiple local landmarks, including Chase Palm Park, which bears the plaque memorializing Chase and her brother, as well as the Morton Bay Fig Tree. In addition, she was part of an interest group which has successfully lobbied the state legislature, Governor Earl Warren, and the regents of the University of California to move the Santa Barbara Teachers College to the University of California system in 1944. And that's the old campus on the Riviera, which used to be the original women's school or something, and they moved that whole campus, and now it's called UCSB. So anyway, that's the historic background of our review board. Now, there's a couple other things I really want to emphasize that I saw coming up when reviewing our, I still want to see, we're still going, I'm still ranting here. So, community neighborhood compatibility guidelines. So I want you, this is in our book, and this is really critical, and I want the board to understand this, and people bringing their projects before us, of what we determine as neighborhood compatible. And it's the local homes or buildings that surround the house that you're proposing. Quite frequently, what I see is a lot of architects and building designers come out and pick and choose houses that are very far away from their project, and kind of decide which ones closest resemble the style of the house they want to build, but it's not necessarily in the neighborhood in which they're developing their home. It's kind of spelled out quite clearly in our book which houses that should be looked at and what our board should refer to in terms of the neighborhood compatibility of the style of the home they're trying to propose. So I just want to really underline that. And finally, FARs. One of the reasons we have FARs, what they call floor area ratios, and one of the recommendations is the 85% rule, is the need or the recommendation not to McMansionize our neighborhoods. So I have a picture here. This is a recent picture of Manhattan Beach. And I just want you to sink this in. This is a house of, where Manhattan Beach is down by Orange County. That little blue house there is actually my brother's sister-in-law's brother's house. And I actually did that remodel. That's one of the few remaining cottage houses left on the Strand in Manhattan Beach. His wife's mother bought that house in 1940 for $20,000. So this is a community that's a very wealthy community, and they do not have FAR guidelines. And if you can see the homes surrounding it, you can see the effect of what happens when people maximize following all zoning regulations. Now, one of the arguments in our community is high density will somehow equal or is equivalent to cheaper prices. I want you to notice those prices. That one house next door to my relative's house recently sold for $16,200,000. That's on a property that's 100 feet by 50 feet. That is considered one of the most expensive properties in that town. So density does not necessarily mean it's going to be cheaper housing. And this is kind of one of the reasons why we have our FARs, to kind of prevent this kind of development occurring in our community. Now, finally, I'm just going to put these up here. So, why have I got pictures of gas stations? Well, a lot of our homes that are coming before our board now, this is what they look like to me. It's the style now, and every decade, a certain style seems to stand out. And in this particular decade, it seems like people want houses that are black and white, flat roofs, and, so I'm seeing where the inspiration is coming from. So this is something to look at. This is very popular on HD TV. And this is something our community has to look at, and I'm just bringing this up to educate people of how architectural styles kind of manifest themselves. It doesn't mean it's a better style, it doesn't mean it's the worst style, but this is the kind of look that I see very popular right now. And in closing, that's my little spiel. Thank you.
Yes, okay. And I think that's all the announcements that we have. And there are no other requests for continuances or withdrawals at this time.
And then I just wanted to bring up, I have to recuse myself for item 4, and then I'll have to leave for the rest of the meeting as well.
Okay, thank you. And I don't believe we have any subcommittee reports, is that correct? Okay, so item 1, SFDB consent assignment and special meeting scheduling. Would you like to?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So again, my name is Ellen Kokinda. I'm the Design Review and Historic Preservation Supervisor. And I wanted to talk to the whole board. We already checked in with the chair because as many of you are familiar, for consent review, generally we've always had 2 reviewers, one landscape architect, and then a second reviewer who generally is more comfortable looking at the architecture. And Chair Miller has agreed to stay on this board for another 6 months through December of this year. So he's been so gracious to do so, and has also been serving on as the consent reviewer with Board Member Klein. And we're at this point where generally we would have switched and kind of rotated reviewers, but the person who was on deck to review was Board Member Motisha, who is no longer serving on this board. So I'm trying to get creative in terms of scheduling, because I know that we need to make sure that we continue to process development applications, and that, our applicants and their owners spend a lot of money to go through our process, and we want to make sure that we're sure that we have quorum and that we have the reviewers there for consent. So the first part of this conversation is to designate or to get volunteers to fill in at the consent review, and knowing that doing a full 3-month stint might be difficult, particularly with summer schedules and kind of the start of, school years and how that works. So if we can at least get volunteers to sign up for those particular meetings, and if I could ask Holly here to pull up. We have a list of all the dates. So I'm hoping to get volunteers in order to fill in, again, just as an interim measure. Yes, again, to kind of help relieve the situation. And I just want to put this in context that as the consent review goes, if the reviewer, by the guidelines only say you need 1, but generally, again, it's helpful to have a landscape architect there, but sometimes it comes up that Board Member Klein is not able to attend, and that's perfectly fine to have 1. If a reviewer does not feel comfortable reviewing, they look at the project and they say, I just can't, I don't feel comfortable making the findings, you have the right to refer it to the full board. So if anybody has concerns about, having the capacity or the wherewithal to be able to review a project, if you're uncomfortable, just know that that's a backup. And that's something that we as staff would support you in and say, if you don't feel like you can adequately review this, then this is a good one to send to the full board, and that's not a problem. So maybe we could zoom in on the dates because nobody can see anything. So I don't know if anybody wants to add anything, but again, we're just looking to maybe go down the list and try to see calendar-wise what could work for people. Claim the time. Our SFDB consent meetings happen at 11 a.m. on Mondays, and they're every Monday. And there's, with an exception for a Monday holiday. So we've got all of that information right here. And either we can, yes, and Mr. Chair, I'm going to pass it over to you unless if there's anything else, but we could just popcorn it, or if in terms of the best use of time, we would love to at least get the next couple ones down, and I don't know if we want to bring this back when people know their schedules a little bit more.
So, yeah, maybe we do this via email where we could all write out which ones were available rather than doing it here now.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
How do you guys feel about that?
Is every, okay?
Yeah.
Great.
So a quick question, who's qualified to be on the consent? Are everyone on this board qualified to do that?
That's, I think that's correct. So we think, well, we might need one, hang on just a second.
Does one have to be licensed? Okay. So, Board Member Claus said she can do the 15th and all of October, so we'll put that down on record. That'd be great, thank you. Of August?
There's no identification in the meeting guidelines of what type of qualifications a reviewer has to have, but in part, I think that it was set up that way because even though the consent reviewers are granting projects or are making motions, the full board has to ratify those minutes. So it's really a full board decision, and that's why it's the rationale behind anyone being able to serve. But like I said, we've historically set it up that landscape architects generally serve because that's such a specific type of qualification. But even for board member Klein, it's understood that not being able to make every Monday that can be difficult professionally. So, okay, we have that updated and we will send that around. So again, just looking for everyone's participation to fill in, and we really appreciate that. And it's really good. It's much less. It tends to be a little bit more informal, and they're small projects, and then these meetings aren't televised, so it tends to be quite informal. So part 2 of this item is to schedule a special meeting. I want to acknowledge that the Single Family Design Board reviews twice as many projects as any other board, design review board, twice as many as ABR, twice as many as HLC. And for that reason, we have such high applicant demand to process projects, and right now we are scheduling out to October 10th, so that's 6 meetings from now. So we have full agendas until then. And I know that, again, it's a lot. You already do so much in terms of your volunteer to be here, and there are long meetings. we're just trying to consider, and we meant to do it earlier, but given the health situations for a little while, it's been difficult to find time between staff and board members to schedule a second meeting. I recognize that August tends to be a little bit more difficult, just again, summer schedules and vacations and, not kind of being on the school year. So we were looking at the dates of Tuesday, September 20th and September 27th. Both are Tuesdays. Again, a special meeting would have to go through the same process of being televised, and we would have to notice that. And it would just be to try to get through some additional development projects so it would be the same type of review, but try to take some of the pressure off of having to schedule out so far in advance.
What were the dates again?
September 20th and September 27th. That was just, again, those were just ideas. It happens to work for City TV. And I also pulled out August 30th. That also works, but again, I'm less clear how August will work for everyone, especially with Labor Day coming up.
Okay, there's an appeal on the 27th.
City Council, I think there's an appeal on September 27th.
Are you attending that?
That, yes, so we're hopeful. There's the potential that might be dropped, but we can't, so they keep pushing it out. So to be determined on that appeal, so I can keep that in mind. But we have
Would
the
the
dates.
hours of that meeting conflict with when we would be convening?
Generally, it would fall at the same time, just for your convenience of scheduling. So that could be another thing where we could at least get input via email from board members. But I wanted to bring it up just so you understand the request and what we're looking for and the reason why we're trying to get another one scheduled. We've got quite a few development projects.
All right, thank you. Well, yeah, I know. I'm busy too.
Exactly. I know it's a good thing, but
good-
we
it's a
just
good
don't
bad
want our
thing.
applicants to wait too much.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So I think that's it for our announcements, so we'll move on to item 2, Mesa Lane. It's a continued item. It's a concept review. It's a proposal for improvements to an existing 1,453 square foot, one-story, single-unit residence comprised of a 544 square foot addition to the first floor, a 390 square foot covered front porch, a 275 square foot covered rear patio, a 224 square foot roof deck, and a 420 square foot attached garage with a 690 square foot accessory dwelling unit, ADU above. The existing 303 square foot garage will be converted to an accessory building and to accommodate a new garage location. The project includes removal of existing driveway and curb cut to be replaced with a new driveway and curb cut. The proposed total of 3,410 square feet on an 8,009 square foot lot is 107% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. Planning Commission review and approval is required for floor to lot area modification. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Project was last reviewed on July 18th, 2022. Do we have minutes from the previous project to read into the record?
Yes, we do, Chair Miller. And I'll have some brief staff comments once we've gone through the meeting minutes.
Okay. So it was last heard on 7/18, continued indefinitely to the full board with comments. The comments were the board generally finds acceptable the planned use of quality architectural materials, the proposed size, bulk, and scale, in consistency with the previous 8/26/2021 review request, which Pilar can expand upon. The board agrees to waive the requirement for the applicant to provide the supplemental floor to lot area ratio materials.
All right, thank you. And for the record, I did review the video for this project. So,
Perfect.
would you like to introduce yourself and show us your project and particularly?
Actually, Chair Miller, just before
Yes.
the owner goes through his
Yes.
presentation of their project. So as it's noted in the agenda, this was reviewed at the last meeting. And at that time, unfortunately, there was not 5 members in attendance, which is required for this particular project because they are pursuing a FAR modification. And one of the findings for an FAR modification is that 5 representatives of the Single Family Design Board vote in support of the project in size, bulk, and scale. So the purpose of this hearing is to get that additional vote so that this can move forward to Planning Commission for that modification. And the architect unfortunately cannot attend. The owner is here to present the project and just to
You're
go
not
over
seeing-
any additional details that might have come up, and I'll be here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you.
So yeah, nice
Hi.
to see you again. I
Yep.
think it was April of last year that we saw each other last.
All right.
And I am the owner.
Okay.
Happy to start with a high-level summary or whatever you would find beneficial in terms of the project.
Let's see, did I write, so basically the minutes, the basic design was approved, so,
We were all comfortable with the project last week. We just couldn't make a motion.
Okay.
We couldn't action on the project because we didn't have enough participants on the board.
okay, so did any changes occurred since the last time you came before our board? Nope.
No changes.
Okay, so this might be real quick and fast, since I already reviewed it, so in concurrence with what the findings were, so if, what do we do?
Okay. So Chair Miller, if the board is comfortable forwarding it to Planning Commission, staff will ask for a formal motion continuing the project to Planning Commission, reiterating or at least saying that you're going to push the motion from the last meeting forward. And any additional comments that you might have about size, bulk, and scale and its appropriateness, but I think that was mostly covered in the motion.
Okay, so did we get any public comment?
No, we did not receive any public comment on this particular item.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there
And-
was several from the.
Yeah. And Chair Miller, we need to actually formally open public comment and see if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item.
Okay.
Actually, I do not have anyone on Zoom, and I have not received any speaker slips today, this morning.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. I only have one question. We'll bring it back to the board for questions. So I'll just go down the list here. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
No.
Vice Chair Eric Kalian, do you have any? No, or Board Member Eric Kalian, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Board Member Klein?
No questions.
Okay. Board Member Brettlinger?
No, none for me.
Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions?
I have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to dive into it because I didn't review the video and not concise with my questions around it.
Okay.
Yeah, so Chair Miller, since Board Member Anderson was not representing the Single Family Design Board at that meeting, and since I understand you have not reviewed the tape or meeting minutes, just abstaining would be
Okay.
appropriate.
All right, great, thank you. All right, let's move to comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
I don't have any comments beyond those that I shared last week.
Okay. Board Member Eric Kalian, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Thank you. Board Member Brentlinger,
No further comments.
thank you. Board Member Klein?
No new comments.
I only one quick question to review. Why is the FAR so high?
I can explain that.
Yes, please.
So when this project was originally last reviewed by the Single Family Design Board in 2021, it was under state legislation, and in state legislation, we do not count the ADU floor area as part of the net total.
Got it.
Since that time, the Coastal Commission certified the city's ADU ordinance, which has been in effect in the coastal zone since April of 2022. So very recently, and unfortunately, even though the overall total square footage had not changed from the 2021 hearing, since we're now counting the ADU, it went from 85 to, I believe, 107%. Yeah.
Got it. All right, thank you very much. Okay, since there are no questions or comments, let's move on to a motion. So a motion's already been crafted. What do we do here?
So, Mr. Chair, the motion at the last hearing was just to continue to the full board, so staff is asking for a motion continuing the project to Planning Commission, and you can say in that motion, that you'd like to continue the comments that were provided at the last meeting in July,
All right,
if you'd
thank you.
like.
Great. So would someone like to entertain a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to continue this to the Planning Commission with the same comments that we had previously and positive comments about the owners, looking for my words here, the owner's participation with the neighbors in designing their home.
I'll second.
Should we include in the motion why the FAR is so high as a clarification for the Planning Commission?
Chair Miller, there will be a staff report given to Planning Commission that I'm going to be preparing, and that will cover the history behind the project and why it's going to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So you second it. May I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes?
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
Board Member Arkillian,
Yes.
Board Member Klein,
Yes.
and I believe Board Member Anderson is abstaining.
Yeah.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
You have
much.
yourself a project.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, 3:40. Oh, we're right on time. Okay, moving on to item number 3, 1218 Shoreline Drive. They're here for concept review only. It's a proposal to demolish an existing single-unit residence and construct a new 1,876 square foot, two-story single-unit residence with a 843 square foot, 100% below-grade basement, and a new detached accessory building comprised of a 403 square foot, two-car garage and a 340 square foot studio accessory dwelling unit above. Project includes 557 cubic yards of cut, 52 cubic yards of fill, and 505 cubic yards of export, hardscape and landscape improvements, and a new curb cut. The proposed total of 2,619 square feet on a 5,676 square foot lot is 100% of the maximum required floor-to-lot area ratio. Planning Commission review and approval of the coastal development permit is required. No final appealable action will be taken at this hearing. Project will require neighborhood preservation findings to be made for project design approval. Project was last reviewed on December 6th, 2021. Do we have anyone to represent the project?
Yes, we do, Chair Miller, while they're getting set up.
Great,
We'll
welcome.
go through the meeting minutes, and then, like the last item, I have some brief staff comments before the applicant gives their presentation.
All right, thank you, welcome.
All right, this project was last reviewed on December 6th, 2021. It was continued indefinitely to the Planning Commission with the following comments. Number 1, the project sorry for the interruption. Okay, starting over. Number 1, the project aesthetically fits in with the neighborhood aesthetically, and its size, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the site and neighborhood. The materials are of high quality. 3, the applicant shall consider studying the roof materials and railing material to be more traditional with wood shingle or shake roof. 4, the landscape selection is appropriate. 5, the applicant shall study the front entry to be more pronounced with the doors and overhang included. 6, the applicant shall provide a landscape plan justifying any screening needed from the neighbors for privacy.
All right, thank you. Welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself and kind of go through how you address those items on the
Chair
minute.
Miller,
Oh, wait,
just-
sorry, I'm
thank you.
sorry. Go ahead.
And then we'll turn it over to the applicants for their presentation. So since the last hearing for this project, the plans have been going through the application completeness review process, and there have been some design changes which the applicant will cover, but essentially they're all in response to plan check comments through that process. Some of that is location of where buildings are on the property. They've actually reduced some of the floor area, and this particular project does include an ADU, so similar to the last project, since the Coastal Commission certified the ADU ordinance, the ADU is now included.
Right.
They had a higher FAR, and because of that, the applicant chose to reduce some of their net floor area so that they would not trigger a FAR modification. So the purpose of this hearing is just to get comments in support of the design, size, bulk, and scale, which overall hasn't really changed too much other than that they've reduced some of the floor area. And then continuing it to Planning Commission with positive comments at your discretion. Also, because the project is over 85% of a required FAR, they do have some required visual aid requirements, some of which are included in the plans, and the applicant can discuss what they've already included. Another requirement for this project is story poles. So if you can include in any discussion today whether or not you want story poles for this particular project, or if you feel it's appropriate to waive them. Right now they're required. So before Planning Commission hearing, they'll have to set those up unless they're waived formally by the board.
Curious, why are they required?
Because the
Trigger.
project is over 85% of a required FAR.
Got it, thank you. Okay, so if you'd like to present your project.
Hi, I'm Liz Hughes for Tom Oxner Architects,
Thank you.
and we're here to present changes to the proposed single-family residence and detached garage with an ADU above.
Okay.
Previously, our FAR was at 90%, and we reduced the square footage of the main house by 77 square feet. And so now the square footage of the main house is 1,876 square feet. And the ADU square footage was reduced by 80 square feet from 420 to 340. I'm just going to kind of skip through some of these initial sheets. This was the similar neighborhood street elevation here where we show the proposed versus the existing residence. Oops. Just going to try and zoom in on that really quick. And you can see here we did make some changes to that entry, which I'll go over
Okay.
later in the presentation. I'm going to skip ahead to the site plan. Okay, so the major changes to this design, as Pilar said, were in response to planning comments during the CDP review process. And we have two northerly facing property lines here. Originally, this line is about 0.1 degrees into triggering the solar ordinance. So we had the building pushed up against this property line and then now have relocated it to the other side. So the building didn't get mirrored, it just pushed over a little bit here. And we relocated the driveway to the other side of the property. The other thing this did was it moved the detached garage and ADU to the northerly side, so that building is actually subject to the two northerly property line for the solar ordinance. And what we ended up doing here was also flipping the stair to the ADU to the interior of the lot. And I'll go over that more when we get to the ADU. So, these are just some of the floor plans, and I will zoom in. This is the main house floor plan, and the main change here was that we enlarged this front entry door with two side lights, and we created a deeper overhang. We actually pushed the building back from the front setback to create a deeper overhang at the entry with some architectural posts coming out. And then in the back, most of it was just reducing the square footage, so we just kind of pulled in that back wall a little bit. The second floor is actually set back on the front a little bit to create this deck that looks out over shoreline, and then on the side as well, it's pushed back to create some relief from the two-story volume of the site. And then our roof plan, we have this cupola here, and there were some comments at the last review to kind of look at some more details of the cupola, so we also have that as part of, I'll go over kind of towards the end of the presentation, the detail of the cupola. And I do want to revisit, since I'm here, we did look at a different, whether to change the roofing material, but because both of the neighboring residences have the standing seam roof, and we felt that it really went well with the style of the architecture and the neighborhood, that it was appropriate for this particular site. We did prepare, and I'm going to kind of go back a little bit, on our photo sheets, we did prepare a study of the neighborhood, kind of showing some of the surrounding residences. And I know this is interesting from Brian's presentation before, that he actually was saying, the immediately adjacent. So we do have two neighboring residences that are immediately adjacent to this property, and a few that are a little bit further out, but because of that, we felt
We have a
this
very
made
outstanding
sense.
silhouette in the earlier that I saw. It's great.
Oh yeah, at the front elevation, yeah.
That right there.
Yeah, exactly. So these two residences here, and actually maybe this one as well, all have the standing seam roof. So we felt that that was appropriate for this project. I'll go back to the main house. Here are the ADU plans. These changed as well. We pulled this wall back, and we also pulled the wall away from the property line a little bit, both to reduce the square footage, as well as, create some stepping in the massing, and also allow for more privacy to the neighbors. If you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit on this plan. We have very minimal openings along the two neighboring property lines, and the reason for doing that was to maintain privacy for those neighbors. And then we just have one opening here that kind of opens up to the view towards shoreline and provides light for the residents. One thing I do want to mention as part of this presentation is that the neighbors did receive a copy of these plans from our office, and we've been communicating with them about both this structure and the main house, and kind of fielding their comments about this. And as we've received some positive comments, and most of the neighbors have a pretty good understanding of the design and are happy with it, although, there are a couple of comments that kind of came in later today, which we hope we can resolve as well. So that's the revised plan of the ADU, front elevation of the main house. And this is where you can see that larger entry door with the transom above, as well as this, the beam and the posts coming up from the wall to create a more grand entry space there. For the railing on the second story, we did make a change from the cable rail to a painted steel rod, so it would be white color to match the posts. We just wanted to have something that had a lot of visibility through it, since people, want to be able to look out towards that view. So that was the reasoning for that railing, and we have that on both the main house and the ADU. And then here's our cupola here, which the upper portion of the cupola is actually all just trim work, so no shingles on the upper portion. It's just all white trim. This is the rear elevation, or actually, no, the side elevation here. So the side elevation, the side facing the driveway. And that's the one that was affected by the solar ordinance. So you can kind of see we have this shed roof coming down to respect that line here, which you can see coming up from the property line. So that's why this building was pushed over. And then here is our rear elevation. And actually, let me go back to that previous one. So we have been discussing with the neighbors. This is actually pulled farther from the property line, but we have been discussing with the neighbors about, you know, window sizes that are facing their properties. So in this particular instance, we have a high awning window with no visibility, but on the upper levels, particularly on the other side where it's closer to the neighbor, we're looking at the sizes of those windows. So scroll down here, and then this is the other side that is now closer to the southwesterly neighbor, and we have a few windows on the upper level and that are facing their property, and we're in discussion with them about whether, you know, they need to be adjusted to maintain privacy. ADU elevations. We do have this this deck on the second story of the ADU. It's less than 6 feet deep, and it's about 10 feet from the property line here. And we think that there's actually on the neighbor's property, they have a pretty dense grouping of mature trees. And so we feel like this is still appropriate for maintaining the privacy of the neighbors. And then we also did shift the stair to the other side, the inside of the lot, so that the entry door doesn't face the neighbor's property. The back side of the ADU here, and then the side facing that other neighbor. And you can see that deck on there, that side. A couple of perspectives showing the massing of this residence. This is the rear side of the main house, the garage and ADU. I'm gonna, oops. Doesn't want to let me zoom. Okay. And then a view from Shoreline Drive, looking towards the main house with the neighboring residents kind of massed in there. And I'm just gonna skip ahead to the cupola section that we were talking about earlier, and this is just showing the architectural trim work kind of around that cupola and the windows, and then this is our typical guardrail. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Tom?
This is Tom Oxner. I'd just like to add that the neighbors to the east and the west, as you're facing the residents, are fine with the privacy issues. And the neighbor to the west, we're still working on in terms of studying those windows as we move forward. But they're both okay with the privacy and massing, and there's a good relationship between the client and those neighbors.
And then I'm going to hand it over to Chuck as well, so he can present his landscape design. So I'll just navigate that for him on the PDF.
And the main purpose of the cupola is to bring in light to the internal stair.
Wait
And
till
it's
I'll
over.
get
Okay.
your questions and some.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Let them present, and then we'll get back to this. It's okay.
I wanted to go into the front yard, are you?
Oh, you want me to zoom in?
Front yard.
And then, Mr. Chair, and to the applicant, just a reminder, there's only a few minutes left, so keep it brief, and if we need to cover more, we can go back during the questions phase.
I just wanted to, in the front yard, of course, that's the view side. So I wanted to bring the patio out flush with the floor level. So there's a couple of steps up, and then the low wall that you saw in Liz's drawing it's not really that high. It's just a curbing, and then a little bit of privacy will be handled with the plantings. And then there's a little bit of a sweepy gate or a fence and gate, and we're hoping that can be stainless steel. We're going to price that out. And then in the back, and also our visibility triangles you can see are at the property line, not at the sidewalk, and we've been chuckling over that, but that's where we understand they need to be. And then in the back, there's about 36 inches of grade between the driveway level and the back property line. So we have about a 2-foot seat wall that holds the grade back, and then that's a spa sitting there. And the pool equipment's, you can see, tucked out of the setback right by the garage. And other than that, permeable paving, and it'll all abide by the WHELO stuff and et cetera. So that's it. I'll have more details later.
Okay, is that your presentation?
Yes, that completes our presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any public comment or questions?
Okay, we do not have any public comment on this particular item that was submitted. I do not have any Zoom attendees at present, and no speaker slips were submitted.
Mr. Chair,
at this
just as
time.
a clarification, we did receive written correspondence, I believe 2 letters, which were distributed to the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any questions, please?
Just a couple. So I'm trying to understand in regards to the deck on the ADU and the privacy issue, although I understand that the neighbors seem to be, happy with what they're seeing. What happens if they sell one day, right? So there's always that. So what is happening there from a landscape standpoint in proximity to the upper deck on the ADU on, I'm going to call it the east property line? Just trying to understand if there's
You
some
see
vertical
that door,
elements there.
the right side of that drawing? Well, there's a pedestrian door coming out of the garage, and we need access, and there's just really not, much space there. And the neighbors do have a good load of stuff, but I guess we're presenting the drawing as you see it.
What are the proposed plantings along that property line right now?
On our side,
Yes,
well, that's just a little sub-shrub, just
just a lower growing shrub.
just like kind of a boxwood size thing. I think it is boxwood.
Okay, and then there's a large palm, it looks like, on the adjacent property. And do you have any idea of what is on the other side of the fence there on the adjacent property? Is there anything taller there?
Yeah, there's
Or
a
what the use of the
variety
house might be? I'm just trying to understand the relationship of the deck to the uses on that easterly parcel.
I don't have charted on the neighbor's landscape.
I might be able to pull up I think I might have some photos from our backyard looking in that direction, so I'll see.
That'd be helpful.
Okay, so here, this is actually the corner I think that we're looking at. I'll try and zoom in.
The aerial might be helpful
Oh,
also.
okay, yeah. So this is the corner of the property here, that's that palm tree. And then there's a strawberry tree and several other palm trees in that area. But then, towards the back of their main house, you can see there's no windows in that portion, but they do have a deck that's looking over onto our property as well.
Right.
This deck is probably 3 feet deep, so it's kind of narrow, but, and then I'll zoom out to the aerial so you can see that. It's a little fuzzy. But you can kind of see some of the plants there.
Okay. That was the only immediate question that I had. Thank you.
Board Member Anderson, do you have questions?
I don't know.
Ms.
The cupola, sorry.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. So I just want to check with Board Member Anderson if you've reviewed the video from the last meeting as well as the plans in advance. Otherwise, you're limited to questions, no comments on this item. Thank you.
Well, so the cupola, I'm going to question the function of the cupola and potentially the height of the roof line of the cupola and the main roof line.
So
Maybe if you could just address what's
Sure.
driving the
Yeah.
nature of the
Okay.
cupola.
Let me, I'll move on to a sheet which might help illustrate this. The cupola was really done for two reasons. One, to bring light to this interior stair, which goes all the way through the project, actually goes down to the basement as well. So the idea, this stair is, we're doing an open riser with a steel stringer here. So the idea is to bring as much light, as natural light as possible, down to that basement area. And then you can see here also running up, and it goes all the way up to the roof. So that was one thing. And also, if you look at the exterior elevation, we just feel as an architectural element that it brings interest to the design. It's creating an aesthetically appealing feature, as well as bringing natural light into the space. And we like how it kind of centers the whole design. And I think, yeah, it was aesthetically and functionally the reasons for doing the cupola.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Arkalian, do you have any questions, please?
I do. Can we go to the motion that we just reviewed from the previous meeting? I just want to review that.
Sure. Oh, is this it? Okay. Oh.
Okay, so I'm on item 3. So I just wanted to confirm from my understanding, there's no, just wanted to see if any of that was considered or if there was any change since the last meeting regarding that item in the motion.
Yeah, we actually did consider changing to a shingle roof, but we really like the standing seam roof, and because of the surrounding residences, felt that we could make a case that it was appropriate for this project. The railing as well, we did change from the cable railing to the steel, just wanting to keep it as open as possible for visibility.
That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions, please?
I do, just a couple. Was there a floor plan for the basement
Oh, sure.
included in here?
Yes, there is. Oh, one more. Here's the basement.
Okay, so that's all finished off and included in the FAR, correct?
The basement is not included in the FAR because it's 100% below grade.
Okay, all right. And then another exciting question is placement for garbage bins and recycling. Where does that go on the
Yeah, so we're showing the garbage bins. We were limited because with the shifting around of the site, we really had it worked out well in the last time that we were here. But when we shifted everything around, we kind of lost some square footage on the open yard. So we were kind of left with a small area behind the main house to put the trash cans, and that's where they ended up for now. We originally wanted to put them underneath the stairs to the accessory dwelling unit, but we're unable to do so because of encroachment on the open yard. So they kind of ended up in the last available spot on the site.
Okay. And where was the placement of the original garage?
The original garage was basically in the same location, but on the other side of the property, same as
Okay.
the main house on the other side, so shifted over.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
Yes. Do you have a detail of the front gate, that lower gate?
Yeah, I have 2 sheets in this set. So there it is in the upper right. So there's a masonry pilaster, and then then you can see the steel pickets.
Great, thank you. And then my other question is, I know it's early on, but do you know what tier you're in? Are you doing any catchment basins or
You know,
just?
there's going to be a civil for sure, so I'm just completely out of that.
Yeah.
We do have civil drawings. They reflect the previous site design because we weren't able to get our hardscape design updated and get civil updated. So they have prepared stormwater design for this project. A lot of it is taken care of with perforated pipe, which is meant to percolate into around the property. And yeah, you can kind of see our previous site design here with the garage and the house on the other side. But we are in tier 3.
Great, those are all my questions.
So I guess I was reading one of the neighbors, and they're bringing up some issues here, and so I kind of want to understand your design decisions, why you, they said the construction, no current garage exists in the back of the property, would seem more appropriate to attach the garage to the main structure to add to the proposed basement as done on other properties on this stretch of shoreline. This would allow the ADU to be 1 story and reduce the mass of the structure on the back of the property line. Another option would be to move the combined ADU garage to behind the proposed new main house so that the mass is all located on one side of the site. I believe the desired garage and ADU can be incorporated into the proposed main project and leave more space on the lot, giving an impression of less mass across the entire site, as well as reducing the need for so much driveway. So how would you
Yeah,
apply to
so actually when we had to adjust the location of the house and the ADU on the site, we did kind of reconsider the design of the entire house. And at that time, we thought to ourselves, well, you know, does it make sense to have the garage separate? Does it make sense to have it attached? And if, I'm gonna zoom in here. If you look at this portion of the site, we actually only have about 6 feet left from the main house where we could add a garage, which means that if you put a garage here in the front of the property, like other of the older residences along this block have done, what you end up with is a garage taking up basically half of your front elevation. This is a very expensive lot, very expensive views.
Yep.
It just kind of, it hurts too much to put the garage there, you know? And we really wanted to be able to maintain this open flow from the interior out to this patio so that the owners could enjoy this open space. So that was the primary reason for separating the garage. The reason why it isn't attached on the back of the property is because of the open yard. You know, we can't attach it over here. There's just not enough room, and we would end up with even more driveway. So we kind of ended up figuring out through this process of shifting the site around that the location of the garage seemed to be the most appropriate to try and maximize the living space for the main house. Then the accessory dwelling unit, it's a natural place to be above the garage because it's not eating up any more of the site square footage. We did kind of, I mean, originally we had the accessory dwelling unit jutting 2 feet towards the property line. So we actually took up a little bit more of this space to try and you know, maximize that square footage there, but because we had to reduce it for the FAR concerns and we shifted the stair to the other side, we're actually opening up a little bit more of that and maintaining the setbacks for this lot here. So those were the considerations we took, you know, when considering this.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Moving on to comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
I do. If we could, let's start with the front elevation of the ADU. I don't know really what I can comment on the ADU, but it's about the deck, so I think I'm allowed.
Yes, Vice Chair Collas, the deck is specifically within the SFDB purview, given its location, and that it does have portions that will face a neighbor.
Okay. I guess generally, for the deck and the amount of glazing up on the top, it just feels like a lot to me relative to the ADU, the massing at large. It feels like a really big deck and a lot of glazing. And when I look at it from the side elevation, I think it is, you really get a sense of how much it is there. I don't know how much of a view they're actually going to get out of here, given the fact that a portion of this looks like it overlaps relative to the main residence. So I can understand the desire to try to get an ocean view out of that, and maybe they do sort of more in an easterly or a southeasterly direction. I don't know. For some reason, it just feels top-heavy to me in terms of the way the roof is coming out and the depth of that. And I can appreciate the desire to provide some shading there. It just seems like a lot to me. Maybe it could be, maybe it's just 2 French doors with smaller side lights, and maybe it's not quite as deep. I don't know what the answer is there. It just feels top-heavy to me.
Yeah, we actually discussed, the gable end is a unique feature to this structure on the site, and so we had some internal discussions about having a hip roof here to try and bring down the massing so that this ridge doesn't extend completely out. So here, basically, we would have it hip back in to reduce the feel of the height of the structure. So we felt that that would be an appropriate change for the structure.
Yeah, I think that would help, especially from that southwest elevation. It just feels like it's really like a big Audi, you know? Okay, and then if we can look at the main residence elevations quickly.
The front or any particular?
Sure, we can start with the front.
Yeah.
The palette is really quiet, which I like, but there's a lot going on this elevation, and part of me struggles with that. Like, is there too much gingerbread? And then part of me likes it because it feels like, well, maybe it was an old cottage that sort of grew over time, and you know, I'm looking at the relationship between windows to outside corners, and there's a lot of deviation there. In some places you have, you know, a lot more return. In some places it gets skinny. I think on the left-hand side, that window actually is at a corner post condition. And so I guess I would be interested in what the other board members think about that. In some ways, I think it creates a charm about the house, and in other ways, I think that I would like, you know, the German in me would like more consistency. So I'll just wait and see how everybody else chimes in on that.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Abstain.
She can't make comments.
I wish.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, next time. Board Member Ari Kaling, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So I believe the placement of the garage towards the back of the site is aesthetically appropriate. I'm looking at it from this southeast view here on the screen, and you know, just I do like the garage and how far it's tucked back. I believe the high placement of the east-west fenestrations, I believe that's aesthetically appropriate, being, you know, considerate of the neighbors. And I believe the proposed main entry is an improvement and more aesthetically appropriate and compatible. And aside from that, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my comments are, I'm a supporter of the standing seam metal roof, and like how you displayed it as part of the streetscape and where the others are to show that it's consistent with the neighborhood. I would agree with the vice chair about the windows, both in the front elevation of the house and the garage. It just looks like, at least in terms of the front elevation of the house, that it could benefit from a little more coordination in window style. There's a variety in there that seems to change depending on the quadrant of the front of the house. I don't have anything to tell you exactly what to do with that, but if you would study that, I think that would be a good idea. And then on the ADU, the windows there, I would agree that it makes it a little top-heavy. But other than those comments, I think the architectural style is consistent with the neighborhood. The height is consistent with the rest of the homes on that block. I like the use of materials. And this is only at the concept stage, so I look forward to seeing the next round. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Klein.
Yes, I would say study the detail of the pedestrian entry gate. Maybe it matches more of the railing, or even study removing it completely. The shoreline usually is very open park-like feel. I would say I appreciate the reduction in the FAR from the last meeting, and also the study of all the windows with the neighbors, I think was considerate. As far as site planning, moving the garage to the back makes the most sense to utilize the open space, which is great. And I think all the materials are high quality and fit within the neighborhood, and there's sufficient screening and fencing along the property lines.
All right, thank you. For my comments, I like the cupola, and your house kind of reminds me of the old homes they used to build in Savannah, Georgia, back in the early teens. And actually, the standing metal seam roof, I think, started there and was primarily to hold up against hurricanes. So I think the standing metal seam roof actually is very appropriate in that respect, in that context. And I tend to agree with Vice Chair Colossus regarding the balcony on the ADU. I think it's a little too big, and I think the hip roof would be more appropriate. Would soften that a little bit. Seems a little top heavy. We do have a standing recommendation that a balcony be 15 feet away from the property line. Regarding the ADU, I'm not sure how that overlooks on the adjoining property. I'd like to feel a little more comfortable in terms of privacy issue with that. Is there a site plan or some way you can address that?
I can pull up, let's see. So you can kind of see the adjacency between their residence and the garage. They do have a balcony that's kind of looking onto this driveway as well. But this portion of their residence doesn't have any windows. So I'm gonna, I'll go back to that photo if you want to take another look at it. Let's see, oops. So down here. So this is the adjacent property, and then the landscaping on their side of the parcel.
Oh,
So they have a dense grouping of trees that's here, and then their yard area is beyond those trees.
All right, great, thank you. That addresses my comment. All right, thank you. Anything else? Looks like you have something you want to say. Did I
just
skip
want,
you?
No, I just want to make a motion if we get there.
Okay. If someone would like to entertain a motion, please.
And Chair Miller, through the chair to Board Member Arkillian, so the staff is requesting a motion to continue this to Planning Commission for the coastal development permit, and it'll come back to the board at a later date for project design approval. Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to have a question. there were a few comments made by the board and on some modifications. Could it go to the planning commission and then when it comes back here, they can make those changes?
Yes, Board Member Killian, they'll have to respond to any comments by the Single Family Design Board when it comes for project design approval. So the purpose of the Planning Commission hearing is just the coastal development permit. It's the land use item associated with the project. Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion to continue the project to the Planning Commission with the following comments from our board. To study the proportion of the balcony, hip roof, and glazing area along the south garage and ADU building's southeast elevation. The board generally believes the architectural style, the materials, and overall building height is compatible with the neighborhood and aesthetically appropriate, and for the applicant to study the pedestrian entry gate in terms of materials or appropriateness for the neighborhood. That's all I have.
I'll second that. Do you want to include any comment in regards to Mr. Brentlinger's discussion of windows on the front elevation of the main residence?
Would like to ask Board Member Brentlinger what particular comments you would like to add.
I made a request of the applicant to study the window treatment on the front of the house, the front elevation of the house, to look at a more coordinated set of windows. The basis of that was feeling that they were it was quite a variety of window sizes and placements, and that would benefit from just some study of that.
Consistency, is that what
Consistency is what I'm looking for, yeah.
Yes, so I would add to the motion, for the applicant to study the coordination of glazing along the southeast elevation of the main house to have a more of a rhythm, speak more to each other.
consistent in
Consistent, yes.
And Board Member Killian, as I mentioned in the staff comments early on, this project requires story poles. Is the board fine moving forward with this project to go to Planning Commission with story poles? Or would you like them waived?
Should we get a straw vote for that? I'd like to get a straw vote on the story poles. How many are in favor of story poles being required, please?
One here.
So all those say A, raise your hands. So one, all right. Who else feel that?
So, Mr. Chair, we'll do a roll
Take a
call
vote.
for the
Thank you.
for the straw
Okay.
vote.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Kathleen.
Board Member, I'm sorry, Chair Miller?
I'd say no.
Yes or no?
I say no.
No, okay.
Let just me.
Okay. Vice Chair Kalas?
I concur with Chair Miller. No?
Okay. Board Member Akilian?
No.
Board Member Brentlinger?
Yes.
Board Member Klein?
No.
And Board Member Anderson? You can
Abstain.
abstain? Thank you.
Okay. All right, so did we,
So I will accept the amendment to the motion as the seconder of the motion and second it.
all right, thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Miller?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas?
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Akilian?
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger?
Yes.
Board Member Klein?
Yes.
And I believe Board Member Anderson abstains. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4. Does anyone need a break? Are we all good? Okay. All right. I'll wait till he gets back. I'll read into the minutes the project. This is a new item for concept review. What?
I don't have the project description.
Okay, all right. Of course. Uh-oh, is there any landscaping? Fine. I know. Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. Okay.
To see you all in person.
Just don't breathe.
That's the rule now. You just don't breathe and we'll be good.
Okay, hold my breath.
We'll try.
Should I proceed or should we wait till?
Soft reset.
Okay. I hope so.
Are you okay with the? Oh, it's good.
Is it on the bottom? Try to find the marquee. Did you try right-clicking it on the, I think it's right here. Where the marquee, where the gravel section.
Okay, can we?
Next to the printer symbol?
But I was looking for the marquee where you draw a rectangle. Just focusing. Oh, okay. That's what I want. Marquees. Okay. Okay. Because, thank you.
Okay, are we ready? Like, moving on to item 4.
Would you like, what sheet would you like?
Okay, if everyone could be quiet, please. Okay, we're moving on to item 4. This is for a new item.
I have to recuse myself for conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Record.
Okay, it's 2501 Medcliff Road. It's a proposal to demolish the existing 970 square foot, one-story single-unit residence and 230 square foot, one-car garage, and construct a two-story, 4,081 square foot, single-unit residence, a 340 square foot, 100% below-grade basement, and a 615 square foot garage attached to the residence by a breezeway. The project also includes an on-site guest parking space and a pool spa. 2 oak trees are to be removed and 3 36-inch box tree replacements are proposed. The proposed total of 4,696 square feet on a 24,580 square foot lot is 99% of the maximum guideline floor-to-lot area ratio. The project site is located on the Hillside Design District and the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Planning Commission review and approval of Coastal Development Permit CDP is required. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings, Hillside Design District, and slope lot findings and grading findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. So welcome. If you could introduce yourself, but before they introduce, would you like to make any comments from the city?
Good afternoon, Chair Miller and board members. Kelly Broderson with Community Development. And as you stated, this project will be going to Planning Commission for a coastal development permit. So it's in its conceptual review stages today. It's, again, you also mentioned the 99% of the floor area ratio. So as you review the project, consider whether you think story pools will be necessary for the board to understand the mass, bulk, and scale of the proposed project.
Okay.
Also, there are several items on when projects go up to about 99% of the FAR, there's several items that this board can waive if they feel that they can understand the project without them. And those are street silhouette elevations, panoramic photo simulations, story polls, as I mentioned, and also a 20 closest homes survey. So as the project proceeds with these comments today, you can determine as the board if you feel that those things are necessary to move forward with positive comments.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chair, just one other thing, and this is for Board Member Anderson. Because this is a new concept, a new item for concept review, you would not need to abstain in this case.
Yay. Okay. Yeah. All right. You can. All right. So with that being said, if you'd like to introduce yourself and show us your project, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge Planning and Permitting.
And hi, I'm Will Gray with Gray & Gray Architects.
And Martha Gray with Gray and Gray Architects.
This is the Gray and Gray.
All right. Thank you.
Well, Martha's not going to be. I just had a couple introductory comments,
Sure.
if I may.
Of course.
Thank you, Ms. Broderson, for being here and giving us, context for this project. It is here for comments only because we do have to go on to the Planning Commission. I wanted to let the board know that we have filed our formal application with staff, so they have gone through a 30-day review process on this. And we're just excited to be here. We've been in line for a little while. We are here to gain your general comments, positive comments, we're hoping, associated with neighborhood compatibility, and that would allow us to move forward to the Planning Commission for the CDP. And I want to mention just a little bit of project history, and it's no accident that Ms. Broderson is here because she did work on the proposed 4-lot subdivision that was processed and approved in 2010 by our Planning Commission. So that subdivision required Planning Commission approval of a coastal development permit. And so this is a property that gets to go 2 times to the Planning Commission for a coastal development permit. But with that, the Planning Commission approved a development envelope, and this project complies with that approved development envelope. It's kind of interesting that it's located in the Hillside Design District because if you've gone by, or you will see from our photos, the lot is nearly level. It's just a technicality where it is in the coastal zone and that it was previously attached to a bluff top property. All bluff top properties are flagged in the Hillside Design District. At that time when the project applicant was proposing the subdivision, it was interesting to me to read that project history because it was intentional to not maximize the development of this subdivision. They could have proposed smaller lots and had more homes here. I know that would help with our housing situation, but I think they recognized just the pattern of the history of development for this particular parcel. And so it was intentional to preserve the property's aesthetic character by having the lot areas far in excess of the minimum 7,500 square feet. So I don't know, do the math pretty quick. We're like 3 times the size of the minimum required. And with that, and as Will gets there with the site plan, you'll see the applicant also offered a 20-foot setback from the private driveway that's on the west side of the property that provides access to the other interior lots. And so with that, I think we can just orient to the vicinity map or the neighborhood map, just so that you see where we are in the city. I don't know if there's any need to zoom. We're all pretty familiar with Medcliff off of Mesa Lane on our way to the Douglas Family Preserve. So
Also keep in mind you have a clock too, so you want to make sure you
am I taking too long
No,
already?
just be aware of it, that's all. That's your
I'm almost done. So we're in the West Mesa neighborhood, and Martha, if you could go to the next sheet. We did this voluntarily. We wanted to have a comprehensive study of the West Mesa neighborhood and the FARs. We did not do a 20 closest homes analysis. That is your purview. We did flag several homes that are close by. If you look in the center image there, the subject property, the project, is colored in yellow, and you can see the size of the lot. And then the homes near it across the way that are highlighted in orange represent FARs that are in excess of the 85%. Of course, ours is a guideline requirement, not a guideline for the FAR, not a required FAR, because our lot is greater than 15,000 square feet. On the next sheet, we were just showing a neighborhood study again. You can see the pattern of development in the center with building footprints. I don't think there's any reason to zoom, Martha. I would just leave it there. Thank you. And I'm just trying to go faster. With one-story homes colored in the light gray, and then the darker, almost black color would represent the two-story homes. And so you could see there the site plan in the center for the subject site. The photos 5 through 10 are keyed, and they show, this is not easy, but they show the subject property. So it's basically, you may want to zoom in on the top panel, just so that they're seeing the property that we're reviewing. Yeah, just the top panel of, there we go. So there's the subject site from I'm just going to read it from the northeast and going along, view from northeast, picture 9. 8 is view from the northwest. And then 7 is view from the west. And is there a street frontage view if we keep going over, Martha?
The street frontage is.
There we go. Is that it right there, number 5?
Right, yeah.
If you just stop clicking, there's there we go, the front of the residence right off of Medcliff Road. And with that, I'll turn it over to Will to walk you through the architecture.
Okay, great. Good. Again, Will Gray, Gray and Gray Architects. I think this is on. And Martha, if we can go back to that previous sheet, that would be great. We're initially going to talk about some unique features to the site that impressed us during our site analysis, and namely how big the site is. It's very large for the Mesa. It's over half an acre. It's 2 to 3 times larger than the typical lot on the Mesa. And it has approximately 160 feet of frontage along Medcliff, with specimen trees and an existing fence and hedging that ideally it gives an open, established feeling to the parcel to the neighborhood. And we'd like to keep as much of that as possible. So I don't know if we can zoom in maybe on those photos. We're here for concept, so things like the fence, we are intending to keep that fence. We prefer the split rail fence along the private drive, but that's something that either we fix up the existing wooden fence and clean it up, or maybe we can propose something like what's growing on, or what's placed on the private road. So that's a discussion we'd like to have. I think at the beginning of the project, it was mentioned that there's an existing approximately 1,000 square foot single-story residence, and that's to be removed. We're proposing a new 2-story, approximately 4,700 square foot new residence, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. And if we could go to the site plan. we're locating the mass of this building, the two-story mass, as far south on the parcel as possible, away from Medcliff and away from the public road. And in doing that, it leaves, I'll wait for the site plan. In pushing it south on the site, oh no, that's fine. You can see the existing residence dashed on the south west corner, where that'll be removed. We locate our new building as far south as we can, considering our program on the site, as I said before, leaving the open area at the northwestern corner of the property. And that's, again, trying to retain as much feeling of the site as possible, of what's there for the neighborhood, while, of course, including, while integrating our program. On the right-hand side, on the eastern side, is the garage, and we push that forward or north on the property as much as possible. We attach it with a covered walkway to the residence, and that the covered walkway is intended to break up the massing and lessen the bulky feeling, the linear feeling of the elevation. And we'll see that when we get further into the set. But namely, we push the new garage north on the site to clear a oak canopy that's on the southeastern part of the site. And that we still are encroaching less than 20% into that canopy, but we're working with Duke McPherson, our arborist. He's written a report, and so he's accommodating into that encroachment, as well as we're removing 2 oak trees basically on the center of the site along the south property line. Martha, if you could, is that hard to zoom? Okay, yep, that's right. No, that's fine. That is the vicinity of the 2 oaks. And they're basically an island in the site by themselves. The real oak, the larger canopy is on the southeastern side, and that's why, again, we're pushing the garage up north away from the canopy as much as possible. And our mitigation trees, Duke is asking us to provide 3 36-inch boxes, and I think we're looking at adding maybe 1 or 2 more to help screen the garage from the public road, from Medcliff, considering we're pushing it up as much as we can to the front yard setback, the 20-foot front yard setback. And let's see, the nice thing about this arrangement with the massing is if you're coming down Mesa Lane and you make a right onto Medcliff and you approach the site, the 1-story garage will step back to the 2-story residence that's that's on the south property line. And then as you proceed along Medcliff, as Medcliff curves up to the northeast, the 2-story portion of the building will begin to recede away from you naturally as the site gets deeper and it gets bigger at that point. And again, we're trying to keep as much of the existing conditions along the frontage and that northeast or northwest corner as possible. So, right. Again, we're trying to keep these site features, and we're looking to work with the existing curb cut and the entrance that is currently there. And we will be adding a new driveway, even though it is in the same general location as the existing. The new, we're proposing to have a chip seal, a binded chip seal as a recommendation or requirement by the fire department. Currently, it's asphalt, so this, I think, would lend itself to a more softer feeling to the site. And I think the color we're looking to be sort of the gray, white, the Buell flat chip seal. We work with a new motor court that's immediately west of the new garage, and that's to shield the garage doors if they're left open or if there's car parking or bikes and things. That is there to mask sort of the internal work of the garage from the from Medcliff, and to give the owner some privacy as well. I think, Trish, as you mentioned earlier, that the site is practically flat. It's about 2% max on average slope, and we're proposing a finished floor that is roughly 6 to 8 inches above the existing grade, and we're minimizing as much of the grading around and on the site as possible. We're working with Flowers and Associates, and I think in the set, I don't think we have to go there, Martha, but we do have a schematic preliminary grading and drainage stormwater plan, and I think the intent on that exercise is to confirm our design that the grading and the stormwater and the drainage is feasible with this design, especially considering it's flat. How that would work, I think Flowers has addressed that with 2 catch basins in each southern corner of the property. Another very important part of this site is that it's located right between 2 very popular outdoor attractions on the Mesa, the Thousand Steps and the Douglas Preserve. I think we all know and are familiar with those. Because of this location, there is naturally more foot traffic and visitor parking along Medcliff and in this area. The challenge that we embraced was how to leave the openness of the parcel and the feeling of the parcel and not close it off, but yet give the owners a feeling of privacy when they're in the building. And I think pushing the building back from the street helps a lot with that issue, leaving as much real estate and area in front of the building.
So
we also work with
you wrap it up.
Smaller doors and windows. Okay. Smaller doors and windows. I haven't really talked about the architecture.
I know. I was just going to say
Okay.
you.
Okay, I'll make it real fast.
Yeah.
Okay, and all right. So the smaller doors and windows along the north elevation. We have one large artist window that is allowing northern light in, and we intend to shield that with landscaping. As we make our way around to the western elevation, we have similar style architecture with a little bit larger windows. I think we'll see
You can scroll through, yeah.
on the elevation. I think it's up, Martha.
So our focus is size, bulk, and scale, so if you can really just show us your elevations and how
Okay.
they really,
Yep, yep. And so as we make our way around on the western elevation, we work with the same style architecture on the north, but then as we transfer to the southern part of the building, we work with an octagon sunroom that makes the transition to the south side of the building, where the building unfolds itself with much larger doors and windows, up 2-story balconies, public rooms opening up onto a centered pool and spa.
Okay.
And I think the clients will be spending most of their time in this location, considering the easy indoor-outdoor living. The program of the building, the owners would like an open style living, which is usually contemporary in field, the open dining, kitchen, and living, which is usually contemporary in architecture. However, they prefer a more traditional look, and so we felt this modern farmhouse was a nice balance between the two.
How much more do you have to go?
That's it. Almost there, but I'll make it real fast.
Please.
We use a series of gables, the 8 and 12 pitch, with traditionally used exposed rafters, covered verandas, metal standing seam roof, dark gray, traditional eaves with exposed rafters, horizontal TNG siding, warm white, such as Swiss coffee or linen, dark oil rub bronze doors and windows, limestone for the balconies and chimneys, opportunity for some very fun, interesting, clean architectural detailing at this point.
Okay.
Our plate heights are first floor 10.5 feet above finished floor, second floor at 8 feet. Our maximum roof is a couple inches below the maximum height allowed, the 30 feet, but that is due to the pitch of the roof, the 8 and 12 pitch of the roof.
Okay,
And then
thank
we're
you.
done. Yes.
Just flash on the landscape plan, just to, we don't
All right,
need that.
so we need to move on now because we've taken up too much time, so I want to bring it back.
We do have a landscape plan.
Okay, great. We'll follow up for questions and clarification on that. So did we get any public comment, please?
Yes, we did receive some written public comment from a Colleen and Mark Mittenmiller, and a Lost Lines, and a Gary St. Dennis. Okay, are we opening it up for public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Would anyone who wishes to speak please raise their hand on their Zoom? It is at the bottom of their screen. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. I have not received any speaker slips for this particular item. And I don't see any raised hands right now on Zoom for this item.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any questions, please?
I do. I kind of don't know where to begin. This is a big lot. It's a big house. And so I guess the question that I would ask you is, what was the inspiration for this style home in this neighborhood?
Well, it's the program determined by the owners determined what the size, what the preferred size of the building would be, and working with their aesthetics, that this modern farmhouse seemed to fit in with the eclectic style of the Mesa. There is a modern 1970s building immediately, or a series of buildings immediately to the east with simple pitch roofs, and so we felt that the two-story was working with that in that context.
Are those the dark wood sided ones that are north of the old Love property?
That's correct. Yes. That's right, and I think Trish, I think this sheet does give the feeling of the Mesa and what a range of styles there are, and the upper right-hand corner is an example of a building that works with this farmhouse aesthetic. I don't think we're necessarily looking for precedent, but this is something that's similar.
The one on Oliver?
Yes, Oliver Road.
On Oliver, right.
Okay. That's the only immediate question that I have. When I first looked at this earlier today, because I did preview the drawings, I'm struggling with that. I feel like everybody wants a modern farmhouse, and that's great.
Right.
But we live in Santa Barbara. We don't live in North Carolina. And so it's a little bit, it's a little bit difficult right now to give clients what they want, and yet to be respectful to our local history and, the underlying fabric that we are supposed to revere here in Santa Barbara.
Is that your question or comment?
Well, I'm just going to say that the only house that I could think of on the Mesa that somewhat reminds me of what's being proposed is that there's a large craftsman-style home further down. It's not Shoreline. I'm forgetting the other main road. Not Shoreline.
Cliff.
Further down Cliff,
Yeah, I think
closer
I know
to
which
City College. It's on the north side.
Yeah.
Has a large palm.
The grand view.
Yeah, sets very far back.
Yeah.
And that's really the only other home that I can think of in this general area of town that sort of fits this. I'm sorry, I'm not asking questions. I'll stop.
Okay, moving on. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Just a couple of the octagon above. I see some kind of a deck, and just I guess maybe there's larger lots adjacent on the south side by the pool, but you pulled everything down, so I'm sure you've looked at the adjacent neighbor below and the effects on their property with the pool and the house closer to that, I believe, southern property.
Right, which is vacant at the moment, is that
Oh,
correct?
Okay, so,
Right. And again, we looked at views with an apple picker up, and what really you could see from that upper deck above the octagon room, and there are nice southerly ocean views to the east and the west that the owners would like to try to capture.
Such
so it's an observation deck.
Right, it's, right, it is, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Ari Colligan, questions?
No questions.
Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions?
I do have a couple, thanks. One is, do you know how the height of the house compares to the two-story neighbors that you've mapped out on the street?
We do, and we pulled the archive files for a lot of these parcels immediately around the site. And considering they were from especially the ones immediately to the east, they were built in the 70s. They have peaks of their roof, but they're measured from finished floor. And they're approximately, I believe, 26 to 27 feet above finished floor, the very top peak.
Okay.
Two-story building again. So it's, I think if you incorporate the existing grade, we're in the ballpark with the neighbor.
Okay, all right. And then I also had a question about the octagon and the comments about the farmhouse aside for the moment. Is the octagon a consistent with the farmhouse architectural style?
Well, we thought it was an interesting element to the design, and we felt that it almost had a silo feeling to the building, and it would really give it some character. It also helped architecturally make the transition of the more conservative architecture on the north and the west, as we sort of spin the architecture to the south, and the building unfolds itself, and we saw that this octagon room helping that and instigating that change, that modification in the architecture.
So it's more of a transition element than what would be a typical farmhouse styling of a home. Is that fair?
Well, we really like the way that the building unfolds itself to the south, and letting in the light, and also I believe the owners intend to spend most of their time out there, and the indoor-outdoor living with the spaces.
Okay.
So I think that I think this elevation on the south with the larger doors and windows, that's not necessarily in line with the farmhouse, but it's opening the building up and allowing this open space living.
Okay, all right. And then you mentioned an artist's window in the lot here.
Right.
I missed where that was. Can you point that out to me?
And that is on the north elevation facing Medcliff. And because of the smaller windows in the architecture on the north-south, on the north elevation, we thought it would be an interesting element along that stairwell. It's a two-story stairwell
Okay.
in plan, to pull natural north light into the building and the two-story volumes that are immediately adjacent.
Okay, got it. And my other question really has to do with can we look at the site plan on, I guess it's A 0.2?
It's a little down. No, okay, keep going. There
Yeah, it shows the,
The floor plan?
yes, that one.
And the next one, right, yes.
Actually, it's that one, if you can
Oh.
find that.
That's the third.
That's,
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what what's going on the south side. At first, when I looked at this, I thought it was one single lot, but then I realized that the pool defines the property line. So tell me what is adjoining the property to the south then? Is that an open space, or is that a buildable lot? Will there be a neighbor there?
right now it's undeveloped, and it may be a part of these owners. If Right, exactly, and it's undeveloped at this time.
But it is a residential lot as opposed to?
Yes, it is a
Open space.
developable residential lot.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Great.
The public improvement was installed in the driveway, so that's why it looks the way
Yeah.
it does on there.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's an interesting little land plan that,
Fire turnaround.
yeah, that the access to the other routes goes across this property, but the access to this property is not from that private road. So, just an observation, I guess. So that's more of a comment, excuse me. That's it for my questions, thank you.
Okay, I don't think I have any questions, really, nothing. You pretty clearly show where the next, 2415 Metcalf, what house is that? Do you have a picture? That's your house?
2425.
2415, it's the next door neighbor. Where's the picture of that house? Yeah, that one, right there. You have a picture?
I don't think.
You don't have a picture of that house? That's your next door neighbor house?
There's a picture.
You don't have a picture of it? Okay.
Unfortunately.
This is kind of critical that we see your next door neighbor.
Oops.
Okay, I have another, let's see. Did I allow you to make comments?
I started making comments, but I got in trouble, so I stopped.
So, did we get you to comment yet? No. Oh, I'm still in questions, that's why. Thank you, I got a little confused, I'm okay now. So we don't have a picture of the next door neighbor. Okay, those are my only questions, so I'll bring it to comments. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any comments, please?
Board Miller and board
Yes.
members, just wanted to quickly clarify and apologize to the board and the applicant. Earlier, when I stated the items that were, that the board had the ability to waive, I was incorrect, because this project is greater than 15,000 square feet, so it's only a guideline FAR. It's not a required FAR. So when I mentioned earlier the streetscape study and the neighborhood context, et cetera, those things are not required. So I apologize for that confusion.
So those are not required, but do we have the discretion to ask for those?
If you feel that those items, Board Miller and Member Colas, if you feel that those items are necessary to help you understand the context of the project and its relationship to the surrounding neighborhood, then you can ask for additional tools.
Thank you.
This is our FAR, which is on this page.
Are those the 20 closest homes, 25 closest homes?
These correspond to,
Okay.
the red lots
Okay, so
correspond
that's technically not your neighborhood, but anyway, I'll let you continue, Vice Chair.
it's the general West Mesa neighborhood.
Go ahead.
I feel like I've kind of already made some of my comments. So I would like to see a street silhouette study done of this project so that we can understand how it relates to your easterly neighbor and the other neighbors immediately adjacent to you or flanking you. And I'd be interested in a streetscape of the northerly side of the street also, so that we can understand not only what's happening adjacent, but also across the street. With all due respect, I don't think that the metaphor of a silo works here because that element's just not tall enough, but we might want to think of it as a conservatory. That might be another way of looking at it, and it might be more appropriate to the architecture. I think that the privacy of the southerly lot that's currently undeveloped is, while there's no one there now, and I get that, there will be someone there someday. And so I think that we really need to consider how privacy is going to be maintained for that parcel, especially as it relates to the use of the pool in such proximity to that property line. Otherwise, I can see some serious conflicts there potentially. I would like to see, I would personally like to see a more neutral color palette on the house. I understand that white and black is all the rage right now, but when you drive around the neighborhood, even some of your pictures you see them, you've got gray, you've got bright blue, you've got the red farmhouse, you've got a much more eclectic, diverse color palette than just the plain white. And so if there's some flexibility there on the owner's part, I think that a more neutral color palette would go a long way to helping this feel as though it recedes onto the property rather than making as big of a statement. I think it would actually reinforce some of what we've heard from you in terms of trying to keep it back away from the street and feeling like it's quieter on the parcel. I think that the location of the one-story element is probably a good idea. Hard to know because we don't have a picture of that easterly neighbor, but I think that's probably a good spot for it from a massing standpoint. And I don't really take any exception to the idea of it being a two-story home. I would like to I'd like to retain the opportunity to request story polls, but that's really dependent upon what we see when we get our street silhouettes from you. That may put the issue to rest in my mind, but it may not. And if it doesn't, then there may be a desire for some story polls. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
I'm new, so bear with me. The FAR on this and the size of the lot, to me, is not concerning. But I definitely, Leslie, all of your comments around, the pool and the adjacent property, definitely, the color palette, if you would consider, I think would fit in some softer tones with that neighborhood. That might resolve some of your concerns. I think that the two-story stair element needs to potentially be looked at a little closer in regards to, your next steps in design with how that detailing and that large window and the roof, maybe in that same roof line would work. And all the additional silhouettes in that neighborhood would be super great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Kayleen, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So I believe there should be a closest homes survey of this FAR of the surrounding this property. also in support of having a street elevation, street silhouette views of both sides of the street. I believe quality architectural materials are used. Believe the size of most fenestrations are aesthetically appropriate. I'm on page 10 of the plans. With the north elevation view. Yeah, A3. Bottom view, yeah. If you can zoom on the north elevation, thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at this house, and I did drive by the neighborhood. I'm very familiar with this area, and to me, this doesn't really. I'm concerned with the neighborhood compatibility of this elevation in general, particularly how the second story is. I have this impression that the second story, especially near the entry area, is tucked forward, and per 39 TS of our guidelines, there's some examples around that section that kind of explains how how you can tuck back a little bit more of that second story, particularly at the entry, and on the other side of that two-story window, maybe tucking that back a little bit, making the I do appreciate the 3D such as this one right here, but when I was looking at a lot of the other views and trying to get a better understanding of the project, the front entry I believe should be a little bit more prominent. Maybe having that come out a little bit. Maybe that's a way to play around with that first and second story over there. I'm concerned about the two-story high, steel window on that elevation as well, and possibly restudy breaking that out more, making it more compatible with the neighborhood. I don't see many examples of that in this part of the Mesa. I would request a reduction in the first story plate height. Despite the comments from the other board members, I believe there should be a study in FAR reduction. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brettlinger, do you have any comments, please?
I do, thank you. A few things. One, I think, well, for one thing, I appreciate the comments made previously and would agree that probably the biggest challenge here is just neighborhood compatibility. It's a classic design, no question about that, and I think it would be a beautiful house, but the question is, how does it fit into the general neighborhood? And so perhaps it is a color palette issue is the simplest approach, but we'll leave that to you to take a look at. Having said that, I think I would agree that the two-story artist window doesn't seem to really fit the rest of the house. It's an awful lot of glazing in one spot. And then I would agree that next to the primary entrance to the house, it sort of diminishes the main entrance to the house. It's kind of like the reverse of where the attention should go. And for some reason, the octagon has that same sort of friction for me in terms of fitting with the farmhouse style. And it's probably a great room, but it just for some reason sticks out to me in terms of how it fits with the rest of the architecture. I think I really appreciate the way you've or turn the garage and put a courtyard in there, a motor court, to diminish its impact from the street. I think that's a great approach. Didn't want to lose sight of that. I think that, what else have I got here? Just to reiterate, I think a streetscape and a look at the 20 closest neighbors would be critical in terms of the neighborhood compatibility question. Again, noticing this is a concept review only, you've done a lot of work on this, and we're looking forward to seeing you come back.
All right, thank you. Just to kind of follow up on the comments, just looking at this picture, I guess the issue that I'm hearing from the board is size, bulk, and scale needs to be kind of reduced and a little more compatible with the adjacent neighbors, and they need a little more clarification. I mean, when I look at this picture, it's a great design, but it looks like a hotel to me or something at Yosemite. I don't quite see it as a Mesa home. So that's not to say I don't think it's unattractive. It's very attractive, but I think there does need a little more study in this compatibility with its adjacent neighbors. So I think those are my only comments, something to work on. I mean, there have been comments about lowering the plate height, that large window, and I don't know how much thought you put into the impact would happen when the property behind you gets developed, or if possibly the owner buys that property. That would be great if you could have that property. But anyway, so I think those would be my only comments at this time. So with that being said, these are comments only. Would someone like to entertain a motion, please?
Make a motion that the project return to the full board, that it continue to the full board before we move it on to Planning Commission, with the following comments: that the applicant study the 2-story large steel glazing element in the front, and that especially be considered relative to the main entry to the residence and how those two relate to one another. That we be provided with a streetscape silhouette study for both the southerly and northerly side of Medcliff Road, and that needs to include, I would say, 2 residences to either side of this residence. And then it would be the 5 residences that sort of mirror these parcels on the north side. We'd also like to request that we have a 20 closest parcel study done for FAR purposes. I think the majority of the board is comfortable with that, but I think it will help put that question to rest for others. We would like to direct the applicant to pay close attention and address our concerns relative to privacy for the southerly lot that's currently vacant but buildable. That the octagonal element that's on the southwesterly corner of the proposed residence be considered or restudied as to its applicability to this type of architecture. That a softer color palette be considered, specifically as it relates to, I think, mostly the field color of the residence. And I would say we have positive comments in terms of the location of the garage as it relates to the easterly neighbor and the retention of the oak grove at the southeast corner of the property. That's appreciated. That is my motion. I'm open to any additional comments that anybody wants to include.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to add some comments if that's okay with the maker. To study a reduction in the first story plate height and to add some prominence to the entry, whether that, stepping it forward or massaging the two stories along that along the main entry.
I think I've addressed the entry question in my motion. Maybe we can have them read that back. But I am amenable to including a request that the first story plate height be restudied.
Is that acceptable to the?
Yes, it is. Oh,
Okay.
to the seconder?
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, would you like to read back the motion?
Let me try to do this. It's continued to the full board before going to the planning commission. Study the two-story large steel glazing element in the front, and considering how it relates. Return to the streetscape study for adjacent and on the northerly side. Provide a study of the 20 closest homes for FAR clarification. Pay close attention and address the southerly lot currently vacant but buildable. The southwesterly corner, how it is applicable to that type of architecture. Consider a softer palette. Study the garage as it relates to the easterly neighbor. The retention of the oak grove at the southeasterly portion of the property is appreciated. Study a reduction in the first story plate height, or actually we're combining it to study the first story plate height as it relates to the first story of entry. I'm not sure exactly how we were combining board member Arkelian's comments into one.
So I think there's three corrections.
Okay.
As you've got it memorialized right now, Ms. Gu. The first one is that we're not asking them to restudy the first-story garage on the east. We're saying that we think that that's an appropriate location for the one-story garage on the easterly side.
Okay.
At the outset of the motion, there was a comment about the two-story window element.
Right.
And that was combined with restudying how that relates to the front entry and possibly giving the front entry more prominence. And when you reread the comment about the southwesterly corner, that specifically relates to the octagonal element. I think the rest can probably be cleaned up and clarified when you review the tape. Thank you.
And there was softer color palette, not just softer palette. That should be more accurate. Okay. Does the seconder agree with that?
I do.
Okay, may I have a roll call, please?
Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Abstain.
Board Member Arkelian.
Pardon my interruption. You do not need to abstain in this one. You can participate. I'm sorry. That wasn't
Oh,
clear.
yes. It's really fun for the first couple of meetings.
Okay. For this new item, Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Keelian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
and Board Member Klein. Oh, actually,
She's
got it. Okay.
abstained.
She had
Recused herself.
Yes, she had to recuse herself due to
Step
conflict of
down.
interest, working
She's
with
outta
the
here.
same client.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll see you back.
Thank you.
And Chair Miller, through you to Board Member Anderson, the last two items on today's agenda are new items, so you are more than welcome to participate in both questions and deliberation and in the motion making. So these are new to everyone.
Do we need to make a 5-minute break? I'd like to make a 5-minute break and be back here in 5:36. 5:36, yeah. back to item 5. Okay, this is a new item for concept review.
We are missing one board member. It looks
She
like.
had a coughing attack. Okay. Oh, I hate it when that happens. All right, the address is 1414 Santa Rosa Avenue. This is a new item for concept review only. Interior remodel and proposed for construct of a 386 square foot first floor addition and a 759 square foot second story accessory dwelling unit to the existing 1,647 square foot one-story single-unit residence. The project also includes replacement of the existing 400 square foot attached two-car carport and roof deck with a new 476 square foot attached two-car garage and roof deck. I'm getting a tickle. The proposed total of 3,140 square foot and 11,040 square foot lot is 81% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. The project site is located in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Planning Commission review and approval of the coastal development permit is required. No final appeal decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Welcome. Do we have any? Welcome. You have anything you'd like to share?
Hi, Chair Miller and board members. I'm Tony Bauman. I'm the planner assigned to this project. If you were reading that description, I just caught an error on my part. This project's, because it's in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, the review authority would be the staff hearing officer, not the planning commission. But it'd be the same sort of interaction between design review and the coastal development permit where it goes back and forth for the approvals, just like it would for planning commission. And I'm just here standing by if you have questions.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If you'd like to introduce yourself and show us your project.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Derek Stadmiller. This is my dad, Todd Stadmiller.
Well, hi. Welcome.
Well, just kind of give you an overview of what we're doing. We are planning to add a master expansion to the western part of the property. Let me see. So yeah, as it sits right now, we have very kind of a small master right here, and we would like to add to that on the western side and demolish the carport, add a garage, and replace the rooftop deck there, and then add the ADU on top of the southern part of the house. And other than that, it's kind of just the intro. This is kind of our first crack at doing something like this, so I guess.
Chair Miller, we kind of put the owners on the spot because the architect, I think, might be standing by to meet via Zoom.
Okay.
So they were just told that they can do their own presentation, but
we
you
can't.
can see it's on a flag lot set back behind the street, so it's kind of a landlocked parcel. One issue for the board to consider is there's an existing deck on top of the carport. They're proposing to replace the carport with a garage and replace the deck there. So that's an item for your consideration with regard to its proximity to the property line and how it might interact with neighboring properties. The whole second story would be an accessory dwelling unit. There's exterior stair that goes upstairs to a separate unit above the one-story house.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some really nice views from the carport deck currently that we would also capture on the ADU. There was an issue with the turnaround on the garage, so we're actually going to move the garage about 5 feet back from where the existing carport is to accommodate that turnaround. And neighbors to the east of us they have a second story all along that long flag lot as well. And I think they might be joining too. We spoke with them today. They came up to the deck and we kind of looked at the whole thing and their comments. I think they'll reiterate here, but they wanted to see a little bit of a reduction in the width, maybe by about 2 feet of the carport, and more amicable to that. So, but yeah, the existing carport was permitted and installed in '85 when the garage was converted to living space as well. So we're just looking to work off of mostly what we have there, but bring it in a little bit so everyone is kind of happy with that. But maintain those really nice ocean views that we have to the south.
Okay, is that your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to add anything?
Well, I was just going to say, not to speak for the neighbors, hopefully they're on Zoom, but we had a really constructive conversation with them today. And if you can note that from the condition of that deck right now, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know? And one of the issues was the width and the proximity, because there's a 20-foot easement for the driveway immediately to the east and their house beyond that. But nevertheless, the cant on that deck is such that, you know, you have the angle to sit at. And we talked to them about bringing it 18 to 24 inches in to be consistent with the wall of the proposed garage. And again, they'll defer to them and their comments, but that seemed to be kind of a consensus that we have right now, but I'll let them clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Was Mark able to be put on, or
Yeah.
is it possible?
Okay, Mr. Oh, here he is.
So
I'm going
we
to
can
go ahead.
open public comment.
Okay. There, here he comes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so I'm Mark Bucarelli, the architect, and I apologize for not being there. And yeah, I don't know if this is okay protocol, but yeah, I think my clients described it pretty well, and you know, we're certainly open to you know, shaving the deck as needed to you know, to accommodate the neighbors.
Okay, all right, thank you for your, just hang on there and let's
Okay.
bring it to public comment.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chair, we really need to consider this as part of public comment because we're not accepting applicant presentations via Zoom at this time.
Okay. I think that's fine. So, any other public comment?
Okay, we did receive one speaker slip from a Gloria Easter. She can come up now.
Oh, Carl, okay, great.
Okay, Mr. Easter.
Thank you guys for doing what you do. We appreciate it. We live in back of the property, so our property sits back, and their observation deck, or whatever you want to call it, and their windows are going to look right into the back of our property. So we're concerned about that.
Sir, can we scroll to the overall site plan?
I have pictures on my phone, but you probably won't be able to.
Well,
On the second floor.
And yes,
So
you're below us.
you,
Your roof line hits the top of our fence.
you have a site plan showing the adjacent footprints, in particular the Easter's home?
We should have set elevation there for that.
No, it's site plan of the other properties.
Yeah, so you don't have anything showing the adjacent property?
We're just looking for a site plan of yours, or maybe that aerial view there, you could zoom in on that.
There you go.
So this property right here.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's, building your house, and that's great. We're not against that, but we're worried about, I guess there's 2 windows in the back looking down into our property, and then you have that deck where you want to move it. That will be also looking down into our property in the back.
So, Mr. Easter, where's your property exactly? on-
It's the house with the little right there.
That one right there?
Yes.
Got it.
So that's below us right now. So once he builds 26 feet high, it'll be right level, I think, with our top of our building.
Okay, you should see the elevations of your house?
Sure.
Do you have a 2-story house, Mr. Easter?
No, single story.
It's a single story?
Flag lot, same thing.
Okay, and you're to the north of this parcel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there any elevation difference between the two properties? Like,
yes.
is there any grade difference? Is
sit
yours higher?
They sit lower and we sit higher.
Can you estimate what that difference might be? 3 feet, 4 feet, 1 foot, 5 feet?
Lower. Probably 5, I would say 5 to 10. I haven't gotten out there to measure it or
Yeah,
anything.
okay.
But 5 to 10 foot lower, maybe.
Okay.
It's about, because we have it's about 5 feet, because we have a retaining wall at the back of our
Right.
property, and that's like 5 feet roughly,
Okay.
or actually not even, more like 4, and then their level would start there.
Okay,
And we have a fence, right?
okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, regarding that, the north-facing windows on the ADU would be these 2. This would be in the great room, and then this would be just a single window in the 1 bedroom.
Okay.
And that's it, I guess, for us. But those are our concerns, that if somehow maybe you can make the window, I don't know how you do that, but make it higher so that a person can stand out and look down into the property, that would be for us. And then the deck, some kind of foliage back there so it wouldn't be back into our property.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Board Miller, I did have written correspondence received from Isaac and Marianne Dornbush and Hugh Kelly and Katya Bloom. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Is that all for public comment?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kolas, do you have any questions, please? Of course.
I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions because I think we're all still trying to kind of wrap our heads around what's happening here. And I'm sorry that you don't have your architect here with you because I think it would help everybody. But maybe, I think on one of your sheets there was an existing site plan and a proposed site plan. And they were a very diminutive scale. But yes, that's the sheet. Okay, so if you could zoom in on the upper right, the proposed, let's actually start with the existing plan so we can just kind of see what's there. If you can zoom, okay, great. So I'm just going to kind of summarize and please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm just trying to gather information. So you drive down this long road that is your property or you have an easement over somebody else's or whatever, you come in.
Correct.
And can you show me where the existing carport is, just with your cursor,
Sure,
please?
so it's right here.
Okay, that's your existing carport?
Yeah.
And it is attached to the existing residence, it looks like, or right adjacent to it?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and that's the living room sort of on the south?
Living room here.
Okay, and then maybe there's a covered porch or something off to the left?
Yes, this is a porch right here. It's not covered.
Okay.
But it's, then this is the master that the porch comes off to the porch.
Okay, and then living areas right now are kind of to the east and the north,
Correct.
and the rest of the bedrooms are off to the west, is that right?
2 bedrooms, kitchen.
Okay. And then the retaining wall that you were just talking about would be on that property line?
Up here, correct.
Okay, perfect. Now if we can go to the proposed site. Okay. And maybe you could just walk us through how the uses change and like what ends up where in the end. That
Sure.
would be helpful.
Sure. So the southern wall is moving. Well, first of all, we're demolishing the chimney, so we won't have any more wood burning. But the living room remains in this general area and is moved. The wall of that is moved west. Gas fireplace added here. The master bathroom and closet is now in the place of where the actual master bedroom was, and then the master bedroom moves to the west, and that's
Okay.
where it encapsulates this. These 2 guest bedrooms don't change. The kind of Jack and Jill closet just separates them. The bathroom location also remains. The kitchen, we're going to remove the wall between the living room or the dining room and the kitchen, expand the kitchen so it's an open concept all the way through to the living room. And as you said, the garage moves north 5 feet to encapsulate this turnaround requirement here. And that's about it for the structure.
Okay. So it looks like you have an extra deep garage for your washer and dryer maybe.
Correct.
And all the living spaces are kind of on the east, and then all the bedroom spaces on the west still, even though you've pushed out the
Yeah.
master bedroom. more.
Correct.
Okay. That's very helpful information. Okay. So now maybe if we could take a look at the exterior elevations, and we're just trying to look at what the exterior ends up looking like. Okay. So these are the existing.
Right.
We can go past these. Okay, great. So the front elevation is the south elevation,
Correct.
right? Okay. And you are proposing, that's the deck you're proposing above the, is that above the garage?
Above the garage where the carport was, and so same general area, just 5 feet north, so that's there. And then there's the rooftop deck here. And entrance will be on the western side here.
Is that on, that's on the eastern side?
That's our
isn't
eastern
it?
side here.
Okay.
Yes.
Which you're calling the right side elevation.
Right side.
Is that right? Okay, so that's
Yes.
the door. Can you show me where the door is to enter the garage?
That is right here.
Okay. And then there's a stair that goes up to the deck and to the ADU. Is that right?
That would be the ADU entrance, correct.
Okay. Okay, great. And then do you have 2 other elevations?
So here would be the rear elevation. This hasn't changed at all. Double doors into the kitchen. And then this is the additional master that was moved out to the west. And then this would be the master here with the entrance. And these are currently what
Those are the bedrooms
are
now.
bedroom windows.
Okay. And then the second story that's above what we're seeing in that elevation that you just had, that's the ADU.
This is the ADU, correct.
Okay. Do you have a floor plan of the ADU?
Do.
Okay, if you could zoom in on just the ADU portion of it.
More, or is that good?
A little bit more, just on the ADU. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the 2 windows that Mr. and Mrs. Easter are concerned about are those 2 windows, right?
Correct.
One of them is a bedroom window,
This one.
and the other one's in the great room. So just as a point of information for the Easters, there is an egress requirement out of a bedroom on a second floor. You have to have the sill of a window within, I think it's 38 or 44 inches of finished floor. So it would be difficult for them to reduce that window to a short window up high unless they depended upon another window for that egress.
Which they could.
Right. But that's not a requirement out of the great room, for example. So that's why I was asking to look at where those windows were on the plan. Okay, that's all I really need. That was all helpful to just sort of wrap my head around the project. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Nope. Thank you for walking through the drawings.
Okay. Board Member Arakalian, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions, please?
I do, thank you. You mentioned in your discussion that you'd met with one of the neighbors and went up on the deck. Which neighbor was that?
So Katya and Hugh are directly to our east.
Okay, great.
And
they're the ones?
They're the ones that are right next to the deck.
Okay, so you mentioned that you had come to some agreement with them to narrow the deck?
So
or the actual garage itself?
Not the garage, but the deck, because we'll need all of the width of the garage.
Right.
For the garage, but to narrow this width here of the deck by about 2 feet.
So it'd be stepped in from the east side?
Correct.
Essentially and again, not to speak on their behalf,
Right.
because this was our discussion and there's nothing, but right now the deck is, the north-south run on the eastern side is canted probably 18 to 24 inches over the proposed wall, just because that's how they built it, so people can, I guess, lay back when they're sitting down or something. But we talked to them about moving that up and moving it in a little bit, at least consistent with the garage wall, because now it's leaning over the proposed garage wall. But again, I defer to them if they have any, further clarification.
That's helpful, thank you. And then a question about your flag lot makes an orientation kind of difficult with this plan. When I was looking at it, at first I said there's really no front door, but I don't know where the front of the house is, given the flag. There's a page that says the front, but that's not really the front. So I guess what is my question is, can you explain what the configuration is of the house to your east and kind of how you fit, I mean, who sees that side of the house and how do you explain the front entry of the house?
Yeah, so the neighbor to the east, Katya and Hugh, the configuration of their house looks, there might be, I think there's a picture, but looks more or less into our kitchen / dining room. So that's how that's kind of oriented, and that is where our current front door actually sits. There was, what did I do here? That is where the front door is on our eastern side of the house.
Okay.
So that's where we are currently, I mean, that's where our proposed, and that's right here. So that is the front door, and that faces east. And so the proposal here is to do La Cantina setup. So this would remain the front door of the first floor, but we would do the La Cantina doors that would open that whole thing up. But that would remain as it is.
Okay,
in that-
but the
in that
garage, the new garage and stairwell to the ADU would be bumped back basically to that door, right?
Just about correct, yeah. To get that turnaround depth, we have to move the garage that
Okay.
far back, yeah.
Okay, great. Those are my,
It's kind of hard to see there because we're not as
Yeah.
prepared as we should be, but there's a flag lot, to the east of us. I mean, there are three houses, and they're all kind of configured so that they don't back up to one another and look at each
Okay.
other like that. And then there's that 20-foot easement for the driveway. And then, since their house is somewhat oriented this way, it makes like, it gets the front of their house gets further and further away.
so they're
from
staggered.
ours. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
It's
thank
kind
you.
of hard to envision without a picture.
It's,
Sorry about
it's,
that.
I can zoom back in on this one, but that kind of shows
Oh,
you
there we go.
how they're facing more of a western view to the southwestern view rather, whereas everyone else is kind of more or less facing direct south.
Yeah, that is helpful. Thank you. No more questions.
Okay, what are your plate heights for the 8 feet, 8 feet?
10 feet on the first and second story.
Are those existing plate heights or?
Oh, current? No, current is the 8 feet on most of the first floor.
Yeah.
And it's 8.5 in the, what is the living room now, that was the garage.
Okay,
Because
so-
that's a step down right now.
So it's 10 feet now, and what's the second story plate height?
Proposed another 10 feet.
Okay. Okay, those are my only questions. I'll bring it back to comments. Board member, or Vice Chair Colas, do you have any comments, please?
This is a classic example of what we struggle with on our board. Because we're used to seeing a certain level of plans, and it's difficult sometimes when we have a more skeletal level of plans to sort of wrap our heads around something quickly. We have, a limited amount of time to do that. So I think some additional information for your next journey here would be very helpful. Specifically, some information related to the vegetation around the edges of your property, I think would really help, because that would help us understand if there actually is some existing screening. If not, are you proposing any? We would want to see that. I think rather than having a site plan that's showing this long easement and then the property, it would be helpful if your architect could provide us with a site plan that's a larger scale, where we're able to understand the site a little bit better. From the west side, from the west elevation, I feel like there needs to be some resolution to the massing, because it just feels like the ADU's been kind of plopped right on top of the living room, and it doesn't feel like there's any sort of, I'd like to see some sort of stepping down in the massing so that it feels like it's settled in there a little bit more softly than just kind of a top hat. And I would encourage you to consider how you might step back the edge of the deck on the east side a little bit more. And I don't know how you can do that in a meaningful way. It might, maybe there's a trellis element that ends up there and it helps to step the massing down somehow. I think Chair Miller in the meeting earlier had mentioned that we have a 15-foot guideline typically, distance back from a property line for a deck. And if there's an opportunity to respect that on the east side, I think that would, it would help your neighbors' concerns. It's an awfully large deck. I don't know that you need that big of a deck for the ADU. That's a personal thing. But I would consider looking at that and how you can step that back to get closer to the guideline 15 feet. Those are my immediate comments. We'd be interested in seeing a color palette, a finishes palette, and some landscaping information, which I alluded to when you come back to us.
All right, thank you. Board Member Eric Kaling, do you have any comments, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'm in support of Vice Chair Colossus' comments about the front elevation in particular. You know, it's you know, the second story, having that be stepped back. Also, if there's a way for the roof line, you know, just appears to be a very long, you know, very long roof line on the second story. One other comment. Add many other comments, but I'm aware that, you know, this project is, you know, very tucked back from you know, street view, from public views. So you know, I did drive by the property. It's just I'm seeing where the garage is placed on the site. It's definitely, you know, very tucked away and hard to see. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, thank you. And I feel the drawings are incomplete and difficult to review. And as well as, you know, the concerns about the bulk and massing and trying to come up with understanding the design style and articulation is very difficult when the drawings are at this level. So totally look forward to a little more clarity next time you come back.
Okay. Board Member Brettlinger, do you have any comments, please?
I do, thank you. I agree with the previous comments. I think that it would be very helpful to, when you come back, to, as much as you can, detail the neighbors around you in terms of just the layout of the buildings, and so we can get a sense of what is viewable of your home to the neighbors on all four sides. It's a little funky lot in terms of trying to understand that based on this. So yeah, a better scaled plan would be helpful in that. And then you know, we never asked you about the tile that you're proposing on it. So when you come back with, you know, the color schemes, give us a little more information on how that would be used and how much of the house would be covered with that. That would be helpful. It's a good question about the massing of putting the, I mean, I can see why you're doing it, putting the ADU right on top of that front piece with the deck on the side. It does create a two-story kind of flat wall on that one side. But again, we don't really know who sees that wall, or how that matters. And again, I guess it just would be helpful to have much more information about what's around you. And in terms of Mr. Easter's comments about the viewability from the ADU to that home, it would be helpful to know what distance there is from those windows to Mr. Easter's house, as well as the grading differential. So we have a much better idea of where the view lines are from one house to the next. So you got a little work to do, but you know, thanks for coming in and letting us know what you got so far.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you. It's my turn.
Oh,
Looks like
sorry.
you're going to get it.
Don't disenfranchise yourself for the chair. That never works.
It's a bad look.
So, yeah, the plans are a little too rudimentary, so we need to get more information. I think the board definitely can share with you that. The plate heights are way too high. They absolutely are looming, so you need to bring those plate heights down. I will support a 9-foot plate height for the first floor and an 8-foot plate height for the second floor. You can use a volume ceiling in the ADU if you want to get height in there, but I believe a 10-foot plate height is just way too high for this interior lot. I think that'll also address a lot of concerns to the easters in terms of the view, because of the height of this building would be just way out of proportion with the already established neighborhood. So I think bringing it down will really soften that. And to the point of Vice Chair Kloss regarding the deck, yeah, we have a recommendation that the deck be 15 feet back from a property line just for privacy issues. And so that's kind of an issue here with this kind of the property, because you have a garage. So yeah, I think there needs to be some study with regards to being sensitive to your neighbor's privacy issues. So you notice I didn't say you have to go back 15 feet, but I would like to see some study, some awareness of how you can address that. I think you've already talked to him about doing something, so include that or whatever. Yeah, and we did a site section, in particular going through your house to the Easter's home would be helpful. To kind of, I think it would give us a better understanding of your size and bulk and impact. But like I said, if you lower the plate heights, I think that'll address that issue quite nicely. I think those are my only comments. Would someone like to entertain a motion?
I can try.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for this project to return indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. Along the front elevation, to study breaking out or stepping down the massing along the second story, to study varying the roof lines along the second story ADU, to provide existing and proposed plantings around the property in order for the board to better understand screening for the neighbors, to study stepping back the massing along the east elevation, to study the size or layout of the ADU deck to be more in respect to the neighbors, or consider the 15-foot guideline from the property line, to provide a color and materials palette, including the tile veneer in locations, to provide additional views to neighboring properties, to study a plate height reduction of the first and second stories, to provide site sections, particularly a section from the particularly a site section along the northerly neighbor. North-south section. Edit. Yeah. That's all I have.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Have a roll call, please.
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kloss,
Yes.
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
and Board Member Anderson, please.
Yes, Anderson.
Hey, motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you
We
very
look
much.
forward to seeing you.
No, thank you.
Okay, moving on. 214 Salida del Sol, this is for concept review. Proposal to construct a 719 square foot first floor addition, includes conversion of 416 square foot existing garage. Thank you, Tony. A 456 square foot attached garage and a 431 square foot second floor addition to an existing 2,259 square foot single unit residence located in a non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Project includes removal of an existing roof and replacement with a new flat roof, a new pergola at the rear yard, a barbecue and fire pit, and hardscape and landscape improvements. The proposed total of 3,160 square feet on an 8,321 square foot lot is 97% of the maximum Florida lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Welcome. Do we have anyone from the city to make any comments?
Yes, I have one comment just for the board to consider while they're reviewing this project. As the project description states, it is 97% of the maximum required FAR. So just to consider if any of the supplemental materials you may want to see the applicant return with, or if you feel that you can waive those requirements, just if you could include that in the motion.
All right, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself and show us your project?
All right, I'm Dan Weber, the architect with Anna Kappa. And to my left is the property owner and my client, Linda Gilderman.
Welcome.
Her husband, Scott, couldn't be here today, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to make this a light speed presentation since
Wonderful.
it's been a long day for everyone. I think we've got a modest and handsome project that I hope is going to be very, very digestible for you. So I'm just flipping through the PDF here. Okay. In the interest of speed, I'm not going to pause on anything here. The FAR was mentioned. I think this is a modest house. It's consistent with the neighborhood. It's only 2,700 square feet, minus the garage. This is the neighborhood. It's Salida del Sol. It's in this neighborhood right next to Washington School. Blockish back from the beach. Photos of the existing house. It's this kind of 50s, 60s modern ranch tract house. Not sure how exactly you'd qualify that. Tract house is how I'd put it.
Yep.
The neighborhood is a big mix of stuff. A lot of these houses are in this tract. Due to the really favorable slope of this street, Salida, it's just steep enough that a lot of people on the street can get ocean views, which makes it an attractive street, and is in fact the reason that our clients bought a home on this street. Having an ocean view is an absolute must and a lifelong dream. So this response, doing a little second story pop-up, if you guys have driven around this neighborhood, is all up and down this street and the adjacent streets. This house is in the top left is in fact our neighbor to adjacent neighbor to the north. This is maybe 2 up the street. Another kind of modern adaptation of this ranch beach style, a flat roofed modern with this. I would call this a modern farmhouse piece here. Craftsman-ish, another modern, flat-roofed modern house, Spanish, another Spanish, not sure what you'd call this, some kind of a, not sure, mid-century, there's a lot of mid-century modern flat-roof stuff in this neighborhood.
Hodgepodge.
This house immediately adjacent to the downhill is a very, if not flat, very low sloped kind of mid-century modern house. Beach shack, yeah. So we want to embrace this kind of modern beach feeling and be a consistent part of this neighborhood. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. No, that's it. Okay, I'm going to keep flipping fast. This is existing house. You can see here it's got this, I don't know why they did this, but in the 50s and 60s, they always made this right-hand turn or left-hand turn into the side of the driveway, which just makes the worst entry ever and wastes half the yard with all this hardscape. So we want to fix this. Yeah. The slope here is too steep though, so we're going to move the garage to the other side. And you can also see this huge encroachment into the side yard setback on the south, which consists of the existing original house being built over the property line, which was imposed after the house was built, and then another addition, subsequent addition that encroaches even further into the side yard setback. Our proposed site plan, the yellow area is a second floor component, which you can see is strategically located in the dead center of the property for the obvious reasons. We have carefully positioned this second story component to preserve the views of the neighbor which is most impacted to the north. We've got a great relationship with these neighbors. I believe you've received a letter of support from them. So this is designed so that their view kind of out here to the south east is preserved, and our ocean view from the north is, or from the second floor element, is kind of this diagonal view down the street to the southwest, and maybe a little window here to the southeast. I kind of think of this like standing at a concert where everyone's head needs to be positioned behind the person in front of them so everyone gets a view without blocking the view of the stage. Well, it's funny, you kind of shuffle around until it works for everyone. It somehow, yeah, I guess I'm tall, though. I'm vertically challenged. That's all I want to mention on that slide. You can see this entire area in the side yard setback is a encroachment, which we're going to fix. I'll go through all the existing stuff. We're partial remodel. We're largely rebuilding the existing house. Using the footprint, you can see that we're utilizing the primary footprint of the existing structure. So this is the first floor plan. I mentioned we're going to be moving the garage up here to the northwest corner to minimize the amount of driveway that is wasted. We have this primary living space facing out to the private backyard, all at grade. The one secondary bedroom and a den. The new primary bedroom, which faces south and looks into the very private backyard and outdoor living components. You can see that the stair up to the second floor component is set back from the property line, which allows us this really nice pocket to grow some vertical planting and try to screen that, strategically screen that second floor component from the neighbors. I'm also going to point out right here, we're proposing a very dense landscape buffer between us and the neighbor to the east. We don't want to look, from our second floor component, we don't want to look at their house at all. We'd like to not see their house at all. So we want to look at a nice green buffer and a little grouping of trees so that we look out into tree canopy and not any other houses. We're communicating with our neighbors about that. So I hope next time we come back here, we also have a letter of support from them. I'm sure we'll be able to get there. Okay, next slide. This is the very diminutive second floor component. This consists of a tiny gym and an office. These are two programmatic elements that in our new world of working from home are requirements for, I would say, 90% of our clients. So this is an office that's going to be utilized for actual work during the day, and of course a little outdoor space to capture the view and some outdoor living. Our lower level component we're planting with a green roof, so we look over a really pretty roof. We don't have any privacy concern with the neighbor to the south because they step down the hill another few feet from us, and this roof element actually creates a horizon so that we don't look into them at all. We're also proposing a ring of some higher landscape planting around the outdoor space. We considered a parapet wall for increased privacy, but we want to keep the mass small and keep the light and the green level up. So we're going to do a ring of higher planting to make that feel a little more private and protected. Again, there's our landscape tree canopy to protect these views to the east and this buffer of landscaping. Okay, roof plan we talked about. I'm going to swing right by that. Tell me if you want to revisit anything. So we're proposing a flat roofed, modern architectural style for several reasons. We want to keep the mass small. We want to keep the roofs low because this neighborhood has views all the way up the street as it terraces back, so we want to protect the views from the uphill neighbors. This is consistent with this modern and evolving and eclectic beach neighborhood. We've got a palette, a very quiet palette of stucco white plaster and a weathering wood element to complement that. The second floor component, this is set back from the street quite a bit, although it doesn't read that way. I'll show you. So front of the property line and the edge of the sidewalk is here, front of the garage is here. We're another 22 feet back from the front of the garage before you reach that second story component. This is the side of the building that faces the uphill neighbor, so it's a very quiet windowless facade on the setback. The second floor components, which are pushed further away from that property line, this is that pocket of landscape buffer, which I want to grow some nice tall tree canopy stuff up in there to provide a green buffer between us and the neighbor. Moving on, this is the east-facing side of the house. So here's our primary living space facing the backyard, and the second floor component which is pushed way back away from that edge, and the downhill neighbor showing the second floor component pushed back maybe 30 feet or 40 feet from that side of the building. You can see we're conforming to the solar access ordinance with this diagonal line. We're well below the 25-foot height limit. This is showing you the open rail. I'm going to go back to the elevation before. The open rail that we have landed on instead of a solid parapet wall with a green privacy screen in front of that. Okay, really quick first shot at a materials palette. Stucco, I don't really like that stucco. I think maybe a smooth troweled stucco. We're not going to sure we're going to land with that stucco. Don't get too worried by that texture. The wood, I think, probably end up with like a western red cedar or maybe a white cedar that will weather and fade over time. There's other products that we're using like Luna wood and things like that that have a little bit more rustic. We're not sure, but it's going to be wood. The garage door is quiet white. That rail gives you a sense of what we're thinking. The big planted roof is probably going to be a low water succulent mix. Roof deck on a paver system. We've got some concrete and site elements that are more rustic and natural for those components that are closer to the ground. That's it. That's all I've got for you. It's a simple, economical project that's quiet and very modest from the street elevation. We're going to be back really soon for PDA, and I'd actually really like to try to shoot for final when we come back. We're planning on coming back with all of our submittal requirements to get final at our next go around, so we'd like you to consider that. And I'd also like you to consider waiving those requirements which are required for projects that are 85% or higher above the FAR for a number of reasons. One, I think we're so consistent with the neighborhood. It's a modest, small house, and some of those requirements are honestly just very onerous for a project of this scale, particularly the story pole requirements, both in terms of expense and the time that it takes us, and we want to be expeditious.
We'll determine that. So bring it back for, do we need public comment?
Actually, we did receive some public comment from, from Kirk Peacock and Pam Tanasi, plus from Dennis Luterno and Adam A. Martin. We do have one person on our Zoom who has their hand raised, and Mr. Luterno, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to welcome Ms. Gilderman in the neighborhood. We haven't had a chance to meet, and the presentation done by the architect today, I think, pretty much reduced our concern that we had, that we expressed in origin. Because with the picture that we have provided in writing, it's obvious by seeing the chimney, currently seeing the chimney from our bedrooms, basically, that chimney is exactly the second floor and up to the proposed project. But by seeing that a higher vegetation is going to be incorporated in the project, that reduce our concerns. My question is, and for the benefit of the board members, you have to understand that our property is about 7 to 8 feet lower than Ms. Gelderman's property, so it kind of helps to just a little bit higher edge will help a lot in terms of angles. My concern is for the future is, okay, it works great with Mrs. Gilderman, that's what they want, but what happens if future buyer decides to reduce that that edge to end back to 4 feet like it is right now?
Okay,
That is all that I have.
all right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kloss, do you have any questions, please?
I was going to ask you a question, but it sounds like, is that the guardrail that you're proposing for the upper level? It looks like a metal with vertical pickets.
Well, we're at a conceptual level here, so
Okay.
we're presenting just generally a concept that
Yep.
is primarily designed to show you mass, bulk, and scale. So we haven't gotten to that
Yeah.
level of detail, but I could imagine something like that working.
Okay, but not a glass guardrail.
I don't, we're not thinking that right now.
Okay. I like the color palette that you've shown. At some point, I recall, and this is a question for staff, it seems like green roofs were not being allowed within the city, and I'm wondering if that has changed.
This project has been reviewed by the fire department, and they are okay with the green roof. I believe the green roof has to do with being in the high fire zone.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I don't think I have any other real questions, actually. It's a pretty clear presentation. Thank you.
All right, Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Arakalian, do you have any questions, please?
I do. So since it is a green roof, that means all of the roof will be accessible to, walking on it, right?
No, we're, so if you recall the second floor plan, in fact, I'll just flip back to it, it's easy enough. This area with this vertical line poche indicates a roof deck. That's the usable portion. Surrounding the usable portion is a ring of tall planting designed for privacy screening. But this, if you're standing on that deck, you can look down onto this roof. We don't want to look down onto an ugly roof that gets dirty and stuff on it. So we want to look down onto this nice, low, shallow planting. So that's the reference image I had there on the detail page is indicating what that low roof might look like. You can't walk on it though. There's a rail between the deck and that roof.
Okay. I was just, it's probably out of my purview, but in terms of like accessing it, since there's plantings there, but it was just a thought. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if you could just say a few words about the pergola and how that works, and any other thoughts on the structure itself.
Yeah, we haven't gotten too far into the detail of the pergola structure, but the concept is just to provide a small covered outdoor area that's open-sided and transparent to provide some sun protection. So you've got a little outdoor seating space that's shaded.
Okay.
It's low, as you can see, 9 or 10 feet tall or something like that, and probably below the height of perimeter privacy landscaping.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any thoughts on the question that was raised on the phone about the vegetative barrier on the east side, which it sounds like you've got a great plan, but
Yeah.
in terms of what its lasting vulnerability could be?
Yeah. Well, plants are plants, and they die if they're not maintained correctly. I live in this neighborhood, and so I'm subject to a relationship just like this between me and my neighbor. And last year, hedge was really tall and very private, and then his gardeners cut it down. So I said, crap, I better plant a hedge on my side so I can watch out for my own privacy. So that's just life in a dense neighborhood, and that's what you have to deal with, is you're living 10 feet away from your neighbor. And you know, like I said, I don't think anyone that's living in a neighborhood like this likes to look into each other's yards, you know, especially not Scott and Linda. They don't want to look into somebody's yard, and they don't want anyone looking at them. So I think we've got multiple layers of landscape privacy. The physical structures are also designed to be as good as we can possibly make them in terms of being located far away from the property lines, with a ring of privacy around them, and primary glazing oriented in a way that doesn't have a privacy risk. So I feel like we've done what we can do.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
All right. What are your plate heights for your house?
Well, again, we're at concept level, so we're shooting for the overall structure to be in the range of 21 feet or so. Under that, you know, we're 3-4 feet above under that height limit. I think in a flat roofed house, you can't deal with an 8-foot plate height.
That's not what I asked. So you're thinking 10-foot plate height for the first floor? And
The 9-foot to 11-foot range is what's acceptable. Less than 9 is not acceptable. 11 is fine. So I could see us probably ending up at 10 or 11 on the lower floor and 9 to 10 on the upper floor.
Okay. All right, I'll bring it back to comments. Board member, Vice Chair Collas, do you have any comments, please?
It's awfully modern, but I know there's a lot of modern stuff that's going on right now on the Mesa, especially in this neighborhood. Probably several houses that you could point to. I'd be interested in having, I don't necessarily need a silhouette study, but I would be interested in seeing more photographs of the immediate neighbors' homes, just so that I can be sort of assured that this is in fact fitting in, and that it's not a one-off and there happens to be another one like this 10 houses up or something. I think it is relatively diminutive. I would prefer to see the first floor be 9 feet, and I don't see a need for the small office area to be 10 feet. I think that's an easy give to the neighbors for that to remain 8 feet. I live in an old post-war modern house, and our house is, you know, it's exposed beams and TNG, and it's 9 feet, and it's long and linear, and it feels very comfortable. So I don't think that, you know, I think everybody's become enamored with 10-foot ceilings, but I think you can have anything over 8 feet feels big to us psychologically, because we're used to 9 feet to 8 feet. So I would encourage you to consider looking at, you know, definitely a lower plate height for the upper floor, and possibly, you know, sticking to 9 feet on the first floor. In terms of the conceptual color palette that you've provided, I really like the idea of the western red cedar and just allowing it to weather and gray out. I think it would do a lot to sort of grounding this in sort of the established beach community feel that was part of this neighborhood historically. And I think with what you're proposing from a landscaping standpoint, conceptually, that you're going to do fine in terms of dealing with screening issues for neighbors. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have comments, please?
I do not.
Okay, Board Member Arakalian, do you have any comments, please?
I do. I believe the story pole requirements should be waived. But I would like to see, you know, FARs of adjacent properties around this project. I believe quality architectural materials are being used. The wood siding, the hopefully smoother plaster as you're suggesting. In terms of the roof, I do like the sustainable, the permeability of the roof and how it retains the stormwater on the site. Similar to what Vice Chair Colas was talking about in terms of other properties on the street. Having this entire house be flat, I did drive by the property and I did not see a number of houses where all of the properties have a consistently flat roof all the way through on the street. I appreciate you bringing this up because I'm on the on the top row, the third from the left, in the second row, the fourth from the left. I like these designs because it's a blend of a pitch and a flat. I feel like that kind of blends this design more with the neighborhood rather than just a flat all the way through. So I would maybe studying a variation in roofs. I believe the placement and the size of the second story is aesthetically appropriate. I think it's being very, very respectful to the neighbors. Yeah, and some more in your presentation, you mentioned, the proposed plantings, the location of the trees. Would love to see more details about that, and do appreciate your respect to the privacy of the neighbors, and would like to see what kind of plantings they're and where, and just a little more detail. I do agree with Vice Chair Colas about a reduction in plate heights. And last thing, I'm on sheet A101 here. That is, I think, page 11 of the, if we can go to that. I really appreciate your comments about the garage, and I think it makes total sense for it to not curve in. I think it's understandable. Looking at it from this view, it feels like the garage is, very prominent. It's very prominent from street view. I maybe suggest a study and maybe tucking it back, maybe more into the house, or kind of working that around. And I think there's more information in our guidelines about that. Other than that, appreciate the thoughtfulness in the design. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Brentlinger, do you have any comments, please?
I do, thank you. First of all, wanted to commend you on the work in terms of trying to maintain the privacy of your neighbors. I thought that was very well thought out. And you're right about plants. They can die, so we'll look forward to your irrigation plan when you come back to buttress that. In terms of the materials, look like they're generally high quality. I would question maybe how you treat that garage door. As Mr. Arkelian mentioned, it's prominent on the street. So I don't know if it's so much of a movement of the wall plane, or if it's a different kind of material or detail on the garage door itself. But at least in the preliminary plan that you showed us, it's just a blank expanse. So if you could just take a look at that, that would be helpful. Then I think my only other comment would be about the neighborhood compatibility. On a standalone basis, I think it's, the house stands on its own. It would just be nice for us to be able to see how it fits into the neighborhood. So whether it's photos along the street or the FAR comparison, anything that would help us fit your house into the neighborhood as a whole would be extremely helpful. And those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I kind of want to echo. It's a beautifully designed home. However, based on the purview of our board, I think it's kind of critical that we kind of see the adjacent homes. I'd like to see the elevation of your home next to the next door neighbors to kind of see how the fabric of it flows. I'd like to see a little more understanding of the design of your home is kind of fits into the fabric of the neighborhood. The adjacent homes, the close homes, that based on their guidelines. Yeah, I agree. The plate heights should not be exceeding, based on the density of the neighborhood and the already established parameters of the neighborhood. I can't see a plate height higher than 9 feet for the first floor and 8 feet 6 for the second floor. I love the green roof idea. The carbon footprint is being addressed there, and the landscaping is wonderful. So those are my only comments. So would someone like to entertain a motion? Did you have a question about the garage door? Was there some kind of comment? No? Okay. I don't want
Okay, I'll make an effort. Beat you to it. It's Jeopardy. Okay. So let's see. The board would like to continue the project back to our full board. 2 weeks or indefinitely? What would you like to do?
We want to come back for PDA.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that in 2 weeks or not, but we need to debrief after we get done here and figure out when we get that submittal back in.
Okay.
Yeah, once the submittal's in, there's a 30-day review period, and then, we may be able to deem the application complete, in which then you can return for project design approval.
Okay, so we will continue the project indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. We are supportive of the green roof. We appreciate the applicant's sensitivity to neighbors' privacy concerns. The project is using what appears to be high-quality materials, and we would like to ask that you consider the possibility of a blended roofline condition with both sloped and flat roofs, that you provide us with I guess you're asking for a silhouette study of the home with at least the adjacent 2 flanking homes, and again, on the opposite side of the street, the 5 homes across the street. We would direct you to lowering plate heights from what they are currently, with a recommendation that the first floor be at 9 feet and the second floor not exceed 8.5 feet. I think I heard Mr. Bretlinger ask for an FAR study of the 20 closest homes. And we would be looking for a final landscaping plan and final color palette when you return to us for PDA and final.
All right, do I have a second?
I have a second, and then I have one thing to add. Just an amendment on just to study the garage door treatment.
I'm happy to include that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means, if you look at what's been proposed for the garage door, it's a blank white panel, which I think actually creates more of a visual impact from the street, because, as Mr. Arkalian pointed out, the garage is very much present facing the street. And I think that some other kind of treatment of the garage door may diminish that. So the request is that you just look at some alternatives.
So I'd like to amend the motion to include the request that the applicant consider both the location of the garage, because that was addressing a comment you had, in relationship to its proximity to the street, and also how the garage door is treated in order to minimize what feels like
It's dominance.
the garage's dominance over the parcel.
Okay. Does he second or approve the change?
I do.
May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. For continued indefinitely to full board, Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Krillian,
Yes.
Board Member Brentlinger,
Yes.
and the motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Miller?
Yes.
Oh, can you please adjourn the meeting?
Okay, that's the final project on our agenda. I adjourn the meeting for August 1st. Thank you very much.